Are we all ready? Are you ready? Enjoy it? It's really good, isn't it? All right. Got everybody here? You are in for a treat. I was in the Bellagio in Vegas, and I was walking through the lobby, and this man came over. He excused himself for interrupting me, but he said, "I would just like to talk to you." He said, "I've been listening to your stuff for a long time." And he said, "I'm an illusionist." He said, "I've been working at it for many years." But he said, "I want to add what you do to what I do." He said, "Could I meet with you?" So I said, "Sure." I said, "I can't meet you right now. I was on my way to do something, but I said, I'll meet you tomorrow morning." So the two of us sat down, and we talked for a little while, and I was pretty fascinated with him. This is when I asked him, "How do you create an illusion?" He said, "You start with an idea that you believe is impossible, and then you work backwards." The guy really is very good. And so I invited him one time, this is some time ago, to come and perform an illusion for the audience. And he's always making new ones. So he's going to be performing an illusion for you. Now, he has become very successful at this. He puts on seminars in Las Vegas and in Europe. The seminars are generally sold out. And if you're really into learning, I would suggest you find out when he's doing one in Las Vegas and get over there and see it. Because what he's done, he has a lesson and he has an illusion go with it. A lesson and an illusion go with it. And it's a great way to really get into the material, as he's going to show you. So I want you to get on your feet and put your hands together for Anders Hansen.
Thank you very, very much. Are space and time just illusions? You see, an illusion is something that is wrongly perceived or wrongly interpreted by your senses. I believe much of what we call reality, and certainly the way we perceive time and space, are exactly that. Nothing but illusions. Unfortunately, those misconceptions prevent most people from achieving what they really want in life. For 20 years, it was my job as an illusionist to deceive people, their senses and perception of reality. But I realized some years ago, like Mr. Bob explained, that I realized it didn't take my work at all. People are already great at deceiving themselves. Doesn't take my work at all. We're already doing it. What? What do you mean, others? Like Mr. Bob shared yesterday, you don't see the world with your eyes. You see through them. We see with those cells of recognition in our brain, and they're programmed based on our conditioning and assumptions. And assumptions is the key word. An illusion cannot exist without presence of assumptions. If you don't have assumptions about a certain thing, the illusion crumbles. And that is why it is much harder to perform magic for children than adults. We are so much more programmed than they are. And that was the reason why I decided to quit what I was doing and start doing what I'm doing now, which is merging personal transformation and magic in a concept called Real Magic Live, which is a bridge between a seminar and a show. 13 years ago, I had the idea. It was sort of cooking in my mind, but I never did anything with it. It wasn't until Mr. Bob and I sat down and I started realizing, now this is it. I can take everything I had learned from being on stage and merge it with all this beautiful information. And that's when I made the decision. I went from broke, from sick, from having an eviction notice on my door, not a fun place to live. I went from that to doing what I do today. And it's been such an incredible journey. I can't recognize, like I shared with him the other day, I can't recognize the person I used to be. So if you're watching this for the first time, if you're on the live stream right now, and this is your first time, pat yourself on the back, give yourself credit. It's a journey you will never come home from. If you're here for the very first time, and I got so excited when, I think it was Gina or Peggy that asked yesterday, how many was here for the very first time? I got so excited when I saw all those hands go up. Because this information, when you really dig into it and take it seriously, has the potential to change your life forever. It certainly has mine. Space and time, are they illusions? Those are the two we're going to be conquering together now. We're uncovering the illusion of space so that we can keep attracting what we truly desire into our lives. And then we're uncovering the illusion of time so that we can learn to be more productive and more happy in the moment. Who would like that? Yes! Awesome! You! Oh boy. Me. Out there. In here. These are all terms we're socially conditioned to live and operate by, right? But there are misrepresentations. It's not me here, you there, and the world out there. We are the environment we live in. We are the world we live in. Space is just giving rise to the illusion that they're separate objects, that we somehow are separate from our environment, and it's not true. It's not true. We're all part of the same sea of energy. Physicists know this, quantum physicists, they call it entanglement. If you're in a relationship with somebody, you can feel each other over vast distances. Some people who live closely together, they start to adopt each other's vital signs. That happens all the time on an unconscious level. We are affecting each other regardless of distance. Now, it's called entanglement in physics. I like to just call it an invisible connection, because that is really what it is. And let's stop talking about it and start walking the talk instead. So if you currently find yourself to be in a relationship, raise your hand. With someone else besides yourself. It's going to be with an actual human, another human being. You know, some people are like, yeah, I'm so in love with myself. That doesn't count. If the other person is in the room as well, keep the hand up. If the other person is in the room as well, keep your hand up. All right, I'm going to need the help from you two. Please join me on stage and give them a big round of applause. Awesome. Miss Ashley, hi, nice to meet you. If you just come right over here. And Mr.
Hyro.
Hyro. You stand right over here, please. Just a little further apart. And yeah, a little further. Hyro, right over there, please. Yeah, perfect. I'm going to ask you to face each other. Face this way. And Ashley and Hyro, I'm going to ask you to hold out your right arm and hand like this, just parallel to the floor. Perfect. Ashley, I'm going to ask you to just relax completely. Just, you know, no, just keep holding that, but just relax completely otherwise. Just really just close your eyes and just take a deep breath. Pretending you're home in your living room. All the way down in the belly. All right, I'm going to ask you to just become aware of your body. All right, become aware of the clothes on your body. Become aware on the floor beneath you. Just really become aware of your environment. In a moment, Ashley, you're going to feel some slight sensations on your body. They might feel like a tap of the finger, or they might feel like static electricity, or it can be a combination of both. All right, Ashley? So it's your job to keep track on where they happen and how many times, and the order. All right? Just take another deep breath. Just relax completely. We're in a loving environment here. There you go. Doing a great job, Ashley. All right? So your job is to keep track on where they happen, how many times, and the order. When you feel something, don't give it away, don't flinch, don't say anything until I ask you to, all right? Got it? Cool. Ashley, yes or no, did you feel anything at all? Where on your body did you feel something the first time? How many times? Twice. You're doing great, Ashley. Thank you very much. Did you feel anything else?
Yeah, my
Perfect. Anything else, Ashley?
my right.
Right hand, how many times? You're doing great. Fantastic. You can open your eyes. You can both relax your arms. So for you, you did great. You did great, Ashley. For you, nothing extraordinary happened, right? You felt some slight sensations. Not a big deal. But they reacted. You reacted. Somewhat.
It was following instructions. Yeah.
But the truth is, I never touched you. I touched Hyro. Now that came out wrong, but I did. I touched his shoulder, I touched his nose, I touched his hand twice, yet you felt the imprint. True? You have it on the live stream. You did a great job. Thank you very much, Ashley. Hyro, thank you very much. Give them a big round of applause. Thank you very much, guys. That was an illustration of how entanglement works. Albert Einstein said, match the frequency of the reality that you want, and you cannot help but get that reality. He also said, it's not philosophy, it's physics. It's physics. I could write a book about the experiences I've had with this phenomenon up until now. In the past, I didn't know what I was doing. Now, through all the teachings Mr. Bob has provided, I understand the science behind it. I get it. So it doesn't surprise me as much anymore, but there was still an experience a few weeks ago that I feel compelled to share. We were in Denmark doing Real Magic Live, and my partner started texting me pictures of the Maldives, the little island group in the Indian Ocean, and he goes, we should go there on vacation. We're in India in November for the retreat, so why don't we go to the Maldives right after? I thought, that's a good idea. So we started texting each other pictures of the Maldives, because we were going to be in India in November. 2 days later, a friend of mine calls me, and he goes, hey, it's Dave, and a good friend of mine, his daughter's getting married, and it's going to be a huge thing, and they've rented an island, and they really want you to perform at their wedding, because they like the magic with the message in it, and they love the personal growth part. And I go, okay, so where is it? Maldives. Of course it was. I didn't ask when it was. I told him, it's November, isn't it? He goes, how did you know? We haven't publicized anything yet. You just know, because you're attracted. If you have to attract someone from China to make your goal come true, you'll do that. Everything is energy. That's all there is to it. Match the frequency of the reality that you want, and you cannot help but get that reality. As you said, it can be no other way. This is not philosophy, it's physics. So the next time you start to feel a little disconnected, a little lonely, not really feeling you're achieving much, think back to what Hyro and Ashley just illustrated and realize you're already connected to everything there is. Everything there is already connected back to you through those invisible connections. And that is how you overcome the illusion of space. If you use both hands, we can both hear it. All right, okay, great, thank you. That was the first one. Are you ready for one more? Awesome. Is time just an illusion? It is. It absolutely is. If you were to ask the national timekeeper, and yes, we have one such. His name is Tom O'Brien. He works at the Institute for Standards and Technology in Boulder, Colorado. If you were to ask him, he's the US national timekeeper, this guy. He has a huge atomic clock. That's his job, to keep track of time. If you were to ask him, what is it? He will give you an interesting answer. He will tell you that I can't tell you. He says, the closest he can describe it is that time is a man-made construct, something we have invented to try and keep track of a fascinating and complex universe around us. Well, what the heck? I mean, if the guy who's keeping track of it, whose job it is to keep track of it, can't tell us what it is, why are we living as a slave to it? Because most people are. Think about it. We live with our minds either buried in the past or buried in the future. We are not here. And why do we do that? We do it because the past gives us this sense of identity, and the future gives us the hope of something even greater. And that's good if it's a positive image we work with, but in most cases, it's not. According to Matt Killingsworth, he's a happiness researcher. He's researched 85,000 people all over the world, all walks of life, trying to find out what makes them truly happy. According to his research, mind wandering, going to the past or going to the future, he says, is the cause and not consequence of unhappiness. Is likely the cause and not consequence of unhappiness. So we spend our time in those realms, according to his research, 47% of the time awake. Half of the time we're awake. We're not here. We are either in the future, either in the past, two realms that do not exist. 47% of the time. And he says that directly causes unhappiness, that causes more mind wandering, that causes more unhappiness, and that's a vicious negative cycle. On the contrary, he says, the more we are here, the more present we are, the happier we are, and the more productive we become. For those of you who have been so fortunate to study Lead the Field, how many? Awesome. Oh my gosh, we should have all the hands going up. For those of you, that means a lot of folks here who haven't gotten into the material yet. This is beautiful stuff. You don't even want to think about it. Lead the Field is the most incredible program I have ever studied. I feel so blessed being able to dig into that stuff every single day. It is so deep and it's so rich with truth. But when you get to lesson number 11 on today's greatest adventure and time, we are taught a productivity technique that is really based upon harnessing all our power to focus on what is right in front of us right this second. That's how we become more productive. How would you like to make all your problems go away right now? Awesome. I can show you how, and it's not magic, but it feels like it. I'm going to ask you to sit up straight in your chair. Just relax your arms. Let them hang down by the side. I'm going to ask you to focus your attention on one spot in the room. It can be a spot on the table, across the room, on the floor. It doesn't matter. Just bring all of your conscious attention to bear at that one point. Take another deep breath. Focus on that point. And tell me right now, in this moment, what problems do you really have? I like the silence. Because you know what? Problems cannot exist in the present moment. Problems arise the moment you tie past or future to it. You create an emotional attachment to something in the past, something in the future, that creates a problem. Right now, there's just life situations to be dealt with. But we don't have to assign any emotional attachment to it, like Eckhart Tolle points out in his beautiful book, The Power of Now. Because when the future arrives, it arrives as this moment. So right now, there are life situations, but those situations do not become problems until we add time to the mix. That's when things start to grow, and often in a not very healthy way. Right now, there are no problems, just life situations. That's beautiful, isn't it? So think about it. The more present we are, the more happier we are, and the more we can achieve. And for those of you who haven't gotten into Lead the Field, you should get into it. It's a phenomenal program. Productivity technique that Ivy Lee taught Charles Schwab, the greatest steel company in the world at the time, and they grew their results tremendously by applying one technique about becoming more present in the moment and taking one thing at a time. But the human attention span has gone from 12 seconds down to 9, according to a Time magazine article, and the human attention span is about what? Somewhere in the middle, close to a goldfish. Because of all the distractions, all the things we're bombarded with every single day. So, before we get to the illusion itself, which I'm really excited about, it's been 5 months in the works. Let's create a little perspective on time. 5,000 years ago, the Mayan culture in Central America perceived time as being cyclical. How many remember the Mayan calendar that was supposed to end in 2012? Well, that's a pretty crazy concept, isn't it? If something is cyclical, how can it ever end? And many people operated with the assumption it would. So their perception was that time was cyclical. How are we conditioned? We're conditioned to think that time is linear, aren't we? Past is behind us, future is here, present is here, and the future is somewhere out there. That's how we live, don't we? Past is behind us, present is here, future is somewhere out there. But is that an accurate model? Not really. When you study quantum physics, the more we go into the depth of the universe, And reality, we find that time is organic. Time expands from the present moment. Which means, and hold on, this is a real brain fart. That means a decision you make right now travels back in time and affects someone's decision in the past. It travels forward in time and affects someone's decision in the future simultaneously. What? Let's do that one more time. So a decision you make right now travels back in time and forwards in time simultaneously. Because this is all there is. This expands. When I first heard that, it was almost frying my mind. I mean, how can you possibly illustrate it? So for years, I've been grappling with that idea of creating an illusion that would illustrate that concept and showing the importance of this precious moment. And I just couldn't seem to come up with the right picture or the right concept. And as Mr. Bob pointed out earlier, for me to create an illusion, I have to go to that impossible scenario. What would be the most impossible thing right now? You don't let how get in your way. You just focus on what. And then you integrate it, you keep affirming it, and then the hows will show up. Well, that didn't really happen with this one. And I realized it didn't because I hadn't made a decision, really. So at New Year's this year, I decided this is the year where I'm going to develop the illusion of time. So for 5 months, it's been trial and error. It's been failing our way to something that works. Literally, Wednesday, the whole thing broke down because a grain of sand was in the wrong place. 1 grain of sand. All right, try again. Back in the shop. 20 minutes before we opened the doors, James, the incredible technician down there, was still working on it and trying to figure out some things. Wasn't quite right. So who would like to see the illusion of time for the very first time? All right, phenomenal. I want to make sure this looks very random. And it has to be random. Otherwise, you're going to go back and say, oh, well, Anders, you set the whole thing up. So I am going to throw something out in the audience. All right? And if you see this thing flying towards you, what you really need to do is make sure that you catch it. What? Remember what we talked about earlier. We see with our assumptions, not our eyes, because you see the shape of a hammer, you assume it's a hammer. It's a rubber hammer. It doesn't do much harm, depending on what you use it with, but there's still glasses on the table. We want to make sure they don't get thrown over. So I'm going to turn my back to the audience. I'm going to throw it out, and if you see it flying towards you, still catch it, all right? Here we go. Awesome! All right, I heard something up here, then I heard a clunk, but I see you joining me. Good to see you, my friend. Come right over here, right there in the middle. Yeah, that's awesome. Wow, you have support in the audience.
Thank you, guys.
Was it your goal to be here? I love it. Good deal. All right, Mr. Justin, we have here a slot machine. No, don't get too excited. It's a time selector. This wheel chooses the hour, and these two chooses the minutes. Very simple, right? Now, let's take a look at the other side. So as you can tell, whoops, there we go. Very simple, 3 wheels. Very simple. All right, Justin, I'm going to turn it back around, and you are now going to reach through here, and you're going to select the time. Very randomly. I don't know what you choose, they don't know what you choose, you don't know what you choose. Just spin the wheels until it feels right. I can tell you've been in Vegas before. Yeah, I can tell. Unfortunately, there's no slots on this one. But you got it now? You're sure you want to stay there? All right, come back around. Let's take a look. 1:45. Justin, thank you very much, my friend. Give him a big round of applause. 1:45. Remember, what lies behind us and what lies ahead of us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. In this moment, because that is all we will ever have, this precious, beautiful, never-ending moment. Time is running. Justin made the decision 01:45. Do you agree that that was a random decision in the moment? Great. That decision already traveled back in time. It affected somebody's decision 2 weeks ago. My incredible assistant, Lisa, raise your hand. There she is. She's doing an absolutely phenomenal job. She is an Air Force veteran, 23 years in the service, and we thank her for her service. No, she's running my events like a drill sergeant. I mean, I'm just doing what she's telling me. She made a decision 2 weeks ago. She had a little hard time with the decision. She had to choose some graphics, some numbers, and I told her, Lisa, just go with your intuition. Go with what feels right. She settled on it. She printed it. She, not in 1 or 2 or 5 copies, no, she made a decision and printed it in 500 copies. What I'm talking about is the postcard that's sitting in front of you on the table right now. The decision of 1:45 traveled back in time affected this clock that says 1:45. How would it look? How would it look if that decision traveled forward in time and affected the undefined future? How would that look? This is my take on it. Inside the hourglass, a clock has appeared. It says 1:45 on its face. As Albert Einstein once said, the distinction between the past, the present, and the future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. Because time is now. Thank you very much. Thank you.
That's great. Give it another big hand. Now, Anders will get an idea into your mind like nobody else can. I love watching him work. His next seminar in Vegas is on August the 5th.
2nd to the 4th.
What is it?
2nd to the 4th.
2nd to the 4th.
Yeah.
Okay. You might want to mark that down. It's on August the 2nd through the 4th. So you want to mark it down, and if you're interested, we'll do a mailing to this audience.
Really?
Okay, sure.
Oh, that's
Okay.
amazing. Thank you.
No, I think these ideas are so important that we properly establish them in our mind. There's 3 ways of changing a paradigm, or 2 ways, pardon me. One is an emotional impact, the other is constant spaced repetition. Through illusions, you can impact your mind. I was just thinking that in the back of the room. So you may want to go and see him August the 2nd to the 5th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Okay. Good. Now, if you will turn over to page 58. Good. Now you'll see on the slide there, you're a mass of energy in a high speed of vibration. You operate on a very high frequency. You're moving so fast you appear to be still. But I'm going to tell you, nothing about you is still. It's moving at a very, very high speed. If we were to photograph your body with Kirlian photography, that's the way you would look. Your body would be a glistening, radiating, gleaming form. Semyon Kirlian, back in 1934, perfected a form of photography that'll photograph the energy leaving the body. It'll penetrate the camera, penetrate the film. That's what Kirlian photography is. It's named after the author of the... That's how you and I look in truth. If you were to stand in front of an infrared television camera in a completely dark room, you would be a glistening, radiating, gleaming form. Now, let's think. A frequency is a level of vibration. Okay? There's an infinite number of frequencies. There's no end to them. Everything you see, this is paper. We call it paper because of the speed it's moving at. At one time, it was called wood. Okay? We call it wood because of the speed it was moving at. We talked yesterday where you take water. We call it water. It's energy because of the speed it's vibrating at. And we put heat to it, then we call it steam. It's the same energy. You saw here how energy transferred. Tapped his shoulder, she felt it. These are not accidents. Now look here for a moment. Let all these lines represent levels of vibration. There's an infinite number. Every frequency is hooked up to the one above and the one below. There's no line of demarcation where one stops and the other starts. Now, if you understand this in depth, that means everything in this universe is connected. There is only one power. It manifests in many different forms. We think we're different. We only appear to be different. We're not different at all. We're all exactly the same. We just do different things. We think different thoughts. We're involved in different ideas. But we are all connected. And I think when we really get that straight in our mind, a lot of the problems that we have go away. Einstein said the intuitive mind is a sacred gift. The rational mind is a faithful servant. We've created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. You see, you got all those higher faculties, perception, the will, imagination, reason, intuition, and the will. They're totally different than any other form of life. All the other little forms of life operate by instinct, which is perfect. They go by what they see, hear, smell, taste, touch. This is so important we start to understand this in some depth. We're going to use these higher faculties to start doing the things we want to do. Now, what we want to do is control the flow of thought energy. We want to let it flow freely to and through us, improving everything with which it connects. See, when it flows into us, it has no form. We give it form. We give it direction. And it's important that we start to understand this. Let's suppose that X represents where you are. That represents you, where you are in your life right now. You have the ability to take a very honest look at your life and see how you got there. Everything that's happened is recorded in your mind. And you can look back and you can see how one thing led to another, which led to another, which led to another. You met this person, you met that person, you moved here, you lived there, you went to work here. And you'll see in your mind how you got to where you are, because you can look back at it. Now, when you go to look ahead, you say, that's where I want to go. This is the dream that comes into your mind, and you quickly get rid of it because you don't know how to get there. When we think of something, when it comes to our mind, let's understand nothing is created or destroyed. We've tuned into something that already is. And rather than let it go, what we want to understand is that there is a place. It's a frequency that we tuned in on, way beyond where we're at in our own consciousness. If we can see it in our mind, we can hold it in our hand. We don't want to just let it go. Let's realize if we can see it in our mind, we can hold it in our hand. There is where I want to go. There is a place. This is real. This isn't just some fancy idea. That's why von Braun told Kennedy, President Kennedy, it would take the will to do it. The ability to focus on that idea, to stick to your knitting, as I say, focus on that idea to the exclusion of all the other nonsense that's coming at you. Don't pay any attention to the people who tell you why you can't. You're going to stay focused. The moment your belief matches with any state, you fuse with it. That's a state there. Now, you see, if you don't believe it, you let it go. However, the moment your belief matches with any state, you fuse with it. This union results in the activation and projection of plots, plans, conditions, and circumstances. All kinds of things start to happen in our life. When we fuse with that idea, do you remember when you made the decision to do the Doggy Academy? All the crazy things that started to happen for you when you made the decision. They didn't happen before that. Some of you, to get here, when you made a decision to get here, all kinds of things started to happen. And you're here. We got to start to understand this. The moment your belief matches with any state. Well, how do we start to believe it? Well, we've got to understand that when we see something, it's not just something, it's a place. There is a place. It's a frequency. When we get on that frequency, all kinds of things start to happen. This new state of conscious awareness becomes our home from which we view the world. Act like the person you want to become. William James called it the actor's technique. Act like you're already there. It's your workshop, and if you're observant, you'll see outer reality shaping itself upon the model of your imagination. This is so powerful. You're a creative being. How did he create that illusion? In his mind. When you move on to a higher frequency, you're going to be communicating with a world that's totally foreign to and beyond the reach of your five senses. Now, until we start studying this, we go by what we hear, see, smell, taste, touch. We've got to get away from that. We really have to start to understand. When you move on to a higher frequency, that's when you start using your higher faculties. You don't go by what you hear, see, smell, taste, touch. You go by what you can see in your mind nobody else can see. Now, there is a place. Steve Jobs made it very clear. He said, you cannot connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust the dots will somehow connect in the future. You've got to know that you can go there. Yet when you start, everything will start to happen for you. And one thing after another will start to happen. And pretty soon, you find yourself there. It's done. And when you get there, you're going to start to become aware that you could have gone there. Isn't that a bitch? It's interesting, isn't it? When you get there, you'll realize you could have gone there. You've got to control the flow of the thought energy. You've got to let it flow freely. You can't entertain a lot of doubt and worry. It won't work. Okay? To move to a considerably higher frequency of thought, you must first consent. It's got to be your decision. then you've got to adapt to the ideas and feelings this new frequency represents. So you see, it's not good enough just to read it in the book or listen to me talk about it. This is where you've got to do it. This is where you've got to do it. Here. The future must become the present in the imagination of the one who would wisely and consciously create circumstance. We must translate vision into being, thinking of into thinking from. Imagination must center itself upon some state and then view the world from that state. That's what we're talking about here. To move to a higher frequency, you've got to consent. In other words, your decision. I couldn't take you there. Only you can go there. Then you have to adapt to the ideas and feelings the new frequency represents. Then you're operating from intuition. You're not operating from what you can see with your eyes because it's not manifest yet. At the suggestion of a move, though, your paradigm is instantly going to put up a royal battle. All hell's going to break loose inside and will continually fight you. You must take conscious control over the paradigm, remove and replace it. You see, when this crazy feeling takes over inside, you've got to understand what is taking over. You've got to understand what's causing you the problem. And you have to take control. You cannot let the paradigm control you. That's where that feeling inside, it starts to create doubt, starts to create fear, all kinds of nonsense. You've got to understand, it's like a person inside that's against you. That's really what it's like. It's like a person that's inside talking to you, and it's against you. It's a program. It's a paradigm. And it talks to your consciousness when you're alone, when you're laying in bed or getting up in the morning, or maybe when you're standing in the shower. And it's telling you why you can't do it. You don't have the money. You don't know how. You're never going to get somebody to believe in this. All those ideas are going to flow into your mind. And that's what the paradigm does to you. You can ask yourself, what do you really want to do? Okay? I'm going to ask you to take a few minutes, turn your chair in on the table, and talk to each other about what we've just covered here. Carry on a conversation about it. Talk about these frequencies. What did you hear there? Remember we pointed out? You've got to live there. You've got to see the world from there. And you're not using your physical senses. You're using your higher faculties. Okay? Let me have your attention for a moment. Hello, hello. All right, now go back to the screen here for a moment. When you go ahead and you look at that space, or look at what it is you want, we refer to that as a C-type goal. It's a goal that you don't know how to get there. Now, what do you do? This is what I want you to talk about for the next 10, 15 minutes. I want you to share with the group, what do you do to attempt to keep that C-type goal in your mind as if in present tense with all the nonsense going on around you, with the problems that you're facing, maybe the lack of money, or the loved ones telling you you're crazy, you're wasting your time, get a job. What do you do? That's what I want you to talk about. I want you to talk about strategies that you can follow that will help you maintain the strength and the will to keep going towards that one thing. Now, I've been doing this for a long enough period of time to know that every one of us gets doubts. And start to question whether we can ever do this or not. Because you're going to run into real tough times. If your goal is big enough, the problems are going to be big. And so you got to keep going. I think I mentioned, I'm not sure if I mentioned here or not, Milt Campbell was a very good friend of mine. Milt had a key to our house. Whenever he came to Toronto, he could go there. Didn't matter whether we were there or not. He won the silver medal in Helsinki in 1952 in the decathlon. He was going for a gold. Bob Mathias had won it in 48, and he won it again in 52. So Milt was standing on the second step with Mathias on the first step. He said, I made up my mind 4 years from now, I would come back and I would get the gold. 4 years later, he and Rayford Johnson were running through the Olympic Village down in Melbourne, Australia, and Rayford said to Milt, what do you think is going to happen? Milt said, Rayford, you've wasted your time coming here. This one's mine. Now, in 52, when he made a commitment to do that, that meant he was going to have to train every day for 4 years. They compete in 10 different events. The decathlon must be grueling. He didn't have the money. But he made the commitment. When you make the commitment, when it's not just something you hope can happen, it's something you wish could happen. When you make a commitment, you don't do it if it's convenient, you do it regardless. There's a difference. He got the idea, he went to the American government and said, listen, I'll run under your colors, I'll join the service if you send me to a warm climate and give me a damn good coach. He was from Plainfield, New Jersey, but he ended up spending the next 4 years in San Diego with a good coach. He was being looked after because the idea came to him. But he didn't have the idea when he made the commitment. If your goal is big enough, you're going to run into a couple of mountains. And you've got to just treat it as necessary because it's the mountains that strengthen you. It's the problems you have that strengthen you. Now, what do you do? That's what I want you to talk about. When you hit these walls, what do you do? Because you may have an idea that'll help somebody else at the table. Go ahead.
We have a quick question.
Gina. Hello? Hello, hello, hello. It's that time, folks. Hello. All right. Hello. Hello, hello. I don't know if we got this idea out earlier. When I hold up my arm, you hold up yours. And as your arm goes up, your mouth goes closed. Okay? Let's try that. Wonderful. Boy, you take instructions so well. We're going to take a break, around 20 minutes. If you have one of these cards filled in with checks in any of them, we would like you to have somebody at the doors, wherever the doors are, you can give these cards to. Where's the doors they go out? Everybody goes out of. Where are the doors? The back? The back. Okay, if you could have Arash, would someone at the back talk to me?
Yes.
Is anybody listening to me?
We hear you.
Would you put somebody at each door to pick up a card as they go out the door? Thank you. Okay. Okay, we're going to break now. Be back. You can leave your tables just as they are. And then come back to them. Because you're going to be continuing work. All right? Thank you.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to Coach's Corner. Bob didn't know it, but I kidnapped Raj to the Coach's Corner, which is why I wasn't listening to him. Hey Raj.
Hey Mike, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Good.
I have some questions that I want to ask you that I think would be really helpful for our live streamers.
Sure.
So when you're going to change your paradigm, you're inevitably going to feel some resistance and some pushback from your paradigm. What do you do to get through that?
You know, I think if you go back to the morning session when Bob was talking about your want has to be so strong so you don't give into the paradigm. If your want's strong enough, that's how you do it. That's why our goals are so important, that we're obsessed with what we want, because the paradigm's going to inevitably be there. And one thing that I do is I am not looking for my paradigm. I'm not looking to be like, oh, that's my paradigm. So I think the best way to do is really use what I was talking about yesterday when we were up on stage, is use auto-suggestion, because the more you repeat it, the more you're going to believe your goal. And also what Bob was talking about the first part of the day with the goal card. He said just keep reading it over and over again, and when that paradigm comes in, go, oh, that's interesting. And you can literally talk to the paradigm. And once you do, you say, get the heck out of here. And you'll see that voice just suddenly go away.
I love that. You know, one of the things that I do is I always ask myself a question, is this going to give me immediate satisfaction or long-term joy? And sometimes the answer is like, oh man, like I have to say no to this like cinnamon roll that I want or whatever it is because it's not in alignment with what my goal, or I have to say no to doing this because I should really be doing something more productive. Can you talk about making choices that are good for your goals?
You know, it's so true what you're saying, because every choice we make is going to have an effect. You know, just like everything has an effect. So if what we want to do, what I want to do, what you want to do, what everyone there wants to do, is look at their goal and ask themselves, is this choice in line with who I want to become? Is this, like yesterday I was talking about thinking like the top 3% acting. Does this choice get me closer to where I want to go, or is it pushing me further behind?
And that even comes back to the standard that you talked about yesterday on stage and doing things that are in alignment with the standard you said. You want to talk a little bit more about that too?
Well, I think once we develop our standard, everything will come in line with that standard. You know, so you won't minimize your standard once you develop it. It'll continue growing and growing. And then if we look at our goals, Mike, we want to look at, does this goal, even as the goal, measure up to our standard, or should I be setting a goal that's higher? Am I settling?
I love that idea of standard too, because I feel like the implementation of the standard helps you build your confidence in your self-image, so they kind of go hand in hand.
Totally agree. I mean, I think for me, one of the things I talk to Bob about all the time is standard. That's like a big thing for me. But everything correlates to self-image. We're either doing choices, going back to choices that are increasing our self-image, or we're chipping away at it.
I love that. All right, one more thing that I had a lot of people come up and talk to me about yesterday after we ended was accepting an idea. That was something that really resonated with a lot of people. So what's an example of an idea that someone could accept from this weekend to help them get closer to their goal?
For example, I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. And all I'm going to do is wake up at 5 a.m. When that alarm clock goes up, somebody's making it a new habit, are they going to turn it off? They'll remember. If they accepted the idea, they will not turn it off.
Yeah.
That's just a small example.
I love that. All right, any final words for our live streamers?
Just keep going with staying consistent with the seminar. It's every day really builds off on the previous day, and it's going to continue getting better.
All right, thanks, Suraj. We're going to play a quick video for you. You're going to love it. It's a content piece from Bob, and we'll see you back here in about 20 minutes.
I'm standing here on my balcony in the Bellagio Hotel in Las Vegas. I was speaking to about 8,000 people in a ballroom of the Mirage. That's what brought me here. And I was talking to them about change and about paradigms. And I couldn't help but think of the change that's taken place right here in this city. Do you know, in 1970, Eric Hoffer said, in times of change, the learners will inherit the earth, while the learned find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists. Well, the world of 1970 is so different from what we're looking at here. It's like night and day. Do you know, around 1970, Alvin Toffler wrote the book Future Shock. In the Future Shock, he was talking about the change that was going to take place in the future. It was going to be a shock to everyone. He made predictions on the future, what's going to happen over the next 40 or 50 years. And what's happened over the past 40 or 50 years has been so far beyond anything of his predictions, and yet we thought his predictions were ridiculous. Hoffer said, the illiterate of the 21st century are not going to be the people who cannot read and write. They're going to be the people who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. Now think about that for a moment. Do you know, you and I are being controlled, virtually controlled by paradigms. I see a paradigm as being a mental program that has almost exclusive control over our habitual behavior. And I want you to think of this. Almost all of our behavior is habitual.
What I I've discovered and what Bob discovered long before I did is that we are programmed. We have a program. We're programmed genetically. That's why we look like our relatives. We're programmed environmentally. So we pop into this world and depending on the people around us, whatever foods they're eating, we learn to like and eat. Whatever languages they're speaking, we learn to speak. Our intellectual faculties get developed as we get older, and we develop these great gifts, these abilities to choose how we think, to choose ideas that really serve us and will help us live the life that we want to live.
There's such phenomenal opportunity for the person who really understands themselves, who understands how their paradigm was formed and how that paradigm can be changed. And without that knowledge, the opportunity is just going to go right past them, like it is for so many people right now. My life has changed so dramatically over the past 45 years that it's almost difficult to look back and see where it was. And I'd already been working at change for 10 years, 45 years ago. It's been 55 years since I started working and developing my mind. Start to understand paradigms, start to understand the thing that's inside of us that's literally controlling our life. Do you know, we look as different as night and day, we sound different, we eat different foods, we have different cultures, but the bottom line is we're all the same. There is one mind. The universe operates with exact laws. They're not man-made, so they're not going to be changed by man. We're God's highest form of creation. We've got mental faculties and power beyond the scope of our imagination, and we have habitually waste all this potential. I believe if we're really going to enjoy the change that's taking place in the world that we're a part of, we're going to have to start to understand what makes us tick. We're going to have to understand how the paradigm was formed, how the paradigm can be changed, and how it's literally controlling our life. When we do understand that, then we're in control of ourselves. We're living the way we really want to live. We've knocked down all the walls. There's no limitations. Sky is actually the limit. Do you know, I've been coming here to Vegas since the 60s. I mean, whoever dreamed of the Bellagio in the 60s? If anybody suggested they were going to spend $1 billion and they were going to have rooms just to hang Picasso in, we would have thought they were out of their mind. There's a fountain right down here. In fact, it's just starting to go off. It's phenomenal. And the music plays and the fountain dances. It's all engineered. I was talking to somebody here at the hotel one time. They were telling me that there's a whole staff of engineers just managing this fountain. Anybody that's ever been to Vegas knows the Bellagio's fountains. Do you know, towards the end of the dance, it fires water higher than I am right now. And I'm on the 19th floor. And I look down and I see it. I think, what a magnificent creation. And I think of the mind that thought of it, then the mind that designed it. And you know, as magnificent as it is, it's nothing compared to what you're capable of doing. But the paradigm has to change.
See, it's not the thought in your conscious mind. You can say, I believe that I can turn my annual income into my monthly income. But that does not mean that you're going to turn your annual income into your monthly
Hi
income.
everyone,
You see,
I'm
it
so sorry to
depends
interrupt
on-
that video, but I've got a very special guest here who'd like to talk to you. Hi Bob.
Hi, Mikey. How are you? Congratulations. You're doing a good job here.
Thank you. Welcome to Coach's Corner.
Hey, listen. I think this is a phenomenal idea. How do you like the idea? Do you like it? Send us a flags up in the chat.
Yeah. All right, Bob, we had some great questions. One of my favorite questions that came into the chat was, how do you keep a strong and confident attitude about your goal when you have resistance in your environment or circumstances?
Well, first of all, you have to understand the resistance is ignorance. They just do not understand. Now, ignorance isn't being rude. Ignorance is not knowing. They don't know what you're doing. They do not understand it. And you have to treat them like that. Like you wouldn't take a little child that knocked the milk over and spilled it all over the table and the rug. You wouldn't chastise that child because they don't know any better. Well, the people in your environment that are not supporting you and possibly being very detrimental toward it, just let it go. Just smile and say, I understand. Whatever they say, I understand. What you really mean is, I understand you don't understand. You cannot afford to let the outside conditions or circumstance control your thinking. If you do, that's all you're ever going to have. You got to be strong enough, and you are strong enough. You've got infinite power within you. Remember when John Kennedy, I've mentioned this many times, asked Dr. Werner von Braun what it would take to build a rocket that would carry a person to the moon and bring him back safely to Earth. He said, in 5 words, the will to do it. The will is the mental faculty that gives you the ability to concentrate. Well, if you concentrate on your goal, what everybody outside of you is saying won't amount to anything. And you know, when you get there, you will have helped change their life because you're going to make a believer out of them.
I love that. We're learning so much good information this weekend, and we're learning about so many different aspects of success. So how do you pick one thing to focus on, or how do you know what to do first?
Well, I think first of all, you pick the goal that you want most, and then choose to start changing your paradigm. See, your paradigm is the control factor in the subconscious mind that causes you to live the way you're living, act the way you're acting. So take a look at a result that you don't particularly like and realize that there's a cause of that result. There's an action that you're involved in that causes the result. Make up your mind you're going to change that. So what do? You take the thing you don't like and write it out, the result you do not like, and all its negativity. I sleep in every day. I'm always late for appointments. That's the negative side. And you write it out on a piece of paper. Then you write out what's the polar opposite to that. I am so happy and grateful that I'm always early. I wake up, I get up. When I wake up, I get up, and I'm always early for appointments. Now, you write that out in present tense. You burn the negative one. Now, understand when you burn it, you haven't got rid of it out of your subconscious mind. It's still in there. You've got to plant the new idea. And you write it out maybe 100 times a day. And you visualize it. And when the alarm goes off, bing, you're out of bed. Your feet hit the deck. When you wake up, you get up. And you're always early for appointments. Now, it's through the repetition of saying that over and over and over again that you'll start to do it. When you start to do it, your self-image will take a big jump. You're going to like yourself a whole lot better, and you're going to make everybody else like you a lot better. Change one thing. When you've done that, then go and change another thing. And then another. You use the same process. It's the planting of the new idea over and over in the mind that causes it to grow. Okay?
Thank you so much, Bob. One more question.
Okay.
I just want you to give like your hope or your final thoughts to our live streamers for...
Well, first of all, I want to congratulate you for streaming. The beautiful part about this is that today we have the technology to do this. How many countries are we in?
104.
104 countries. When I started in this business, I started in many, many years ago, there was no thought of doing anything like this. In fact, it's a relatively new idea. The fact that we can do this is amazing, and the fact that you can benefit from it. Just make up your mind that you're going to keep tuning in to all the streaming, and keep your ears and eyes open for Studio 333. It's coming soon, and you're going to love it. It's either going to be free, or we're going to charge $5 a month. And the reason for charging the $5, when people pay for something, they have a tendency to place a little more value on it. So I'm inclined to think maybe that's what we'll do. But we're not going to charge a lot of money, and I'm going to tell you, The Studio 333 is to teach people how to do things they think they can't do. You're going to love it. It's going to be phenomenal. I'm really looking forward to it.
Thanks, Bob.
I got to thank you for the design and carrying through this. I was on a plane thinking of that, talking to Mikey. She's in Dallas, Texas. I'm at 35,000 feet, and we're communicating back and forth. That's something else we couldn't have done just a very short period of time ago. But we can now, and we can communicate with you now. And I want to thank you for tuning in. Tell your friends to watch this. Get them involved. It's so inexpensive, and it's so powerful. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. We'll be back in about 10 or 15 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. How many of you love money? I got some money here for you. Where's Wendy? Where's Wendy? Oh, I got money for everybody. Wendy? It's real. So I remember one time, thank you, Tommy, that's great. I remember one time hearing Mary Morrissey tell this story, and it's a great story, and it really illustrates what we've been talking about for the last 2 days. She was saying that she went to a seminar one time, and this gentleman got on stage, and he had a stack of $100 bills, just like this, and he fanned them out. And he stood on stage, and he said, I love money. I love money. I love money. Like he's having a love affair with the money on stage. And he said, I want to ask you a question. How many of you were repulsed from what I just did? Now, anyone in this room repulsed by that? I didn't think so. And Mary said that she had to admit that she actually felt that. And he said, I want you to know something. Money hears you. It hears you. It goes where it's loved, and it stays where it's appreciated. You want to love money. You see Bob with his cell phone all the time, right? And he gets texts, like nonstop texts. And I was thinking yesterday, I wonder how he doesn't, like it's in his pocket, it's vibrating, right? I wonder how it doesn't distract him, but it obviously doesn't. But you know how we send texts sometimes and we use abbreviations, like LOL, which means what? Laugh out loud, right? So one day, Bob sends a text to his grandson, Danny, and Danny's in his 20s. So he says, Danny, what does this mean? IDKBRBTTYL. And Danny replies, I don't know, be right back, talk to you later. And Bob replies, well, thanks anyways, I'll ask your sister. All right, we are going to get into goals. This is one of my absolute favorite subjects. But before we get into goals, you've heard Bob talk about the importance of being in the study. If you want to get better results, you have to increase your level of awareness. And so Bob had talked about a couple years ago, he was invited by a gentleman to produce a movie, a whole series of videos, lessons based on Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. And who better to do that than Bob Proctor? Well, they created a phenomenal product called Living the Legacy. And I'm going to invite up Arash, who is the Proctor Gallagher head trainer, or coach, pardon me, to share with you what Living the Legacy is all about and how it relates to you and your goals. So let's give Arash a big round of applause.
You know, I was just talking to Bob for a moment, and we were talking about when I first studied Living the Legacy. Back in November, he said, I want you to go through this program I was doing. And he said, tell me honestly what you think. And I knew he was doing the program because when he was filming it, we were talking every day of, well, what did you think? Because I'm always studying him. For the past 11 years, I have been studying him every day. And I told him, I said, well, I'll give you honest feedback. My favorite program, the self-study program similar to this, was a program called Lead the Field. And Bob did this many years ago, recreating Earl Nightingale's Lead the Field. anyhow, I'm watching this, Living the Legacy, and I am blown away. Since November, I have not stopped watching it. Every week since November, I've watched it. And it takes a lot for me to be impressed with anything that, because Bob has trained me so well, and he won't watch himself. But I called him one day and I said, Bob, this is the absolute best thing you've ever done. And anybody who has watched that will tell you the same thing. This isn't me over-exaggerating it. It is absolutely phenomenal. And I will tell you, he takes all of Napoleon Hill's principles and he dissects them. And he creates a philosophy from Bob's awareness from studying this every day for the past 58 plus years. And one thing that Bob told me, and I think he's told you, that if we're not studying an hour a day, we don't deserve to win. And I highly encourage every one of you, and Bob has talked about how important study is here the first 2 days. I highly encourage you get this for yourself and really, commit the next 6 months to it. And then do it again, and do it again. I haven't done it that long yet because I've been studying it since November, but I highly encourage all of you to do it. And I think there's a few people here. I know Bob over there, you've been studying it. Why don't you come up and tell us what your impressions have been?
Let's give a big round of applause for Mr. Robert Pascuzzi. The other Bobby P.
All right, me and some cashews. So you want me to tell you about leaving the legacy?
That's right.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm just a huge believer in self-development. Obviously, you guys are. That's why you're here. I've been into it for 25 plus years. All of Bob's programs are fantastic. My habit is I get up in the morning. I usually get to the gym by 6 o'clock. All these programs, Lead the Legacy, Lead the Field, you can get them on your phone, right? And then I just plug in the headphones, and while I'm working out or I'm on the cardio or whatever, I'm listening to this stuff. And it's just fantastic. Because for me, what it does, you're digesting the information, but also think about the vibration you're putting yourself in right in the first part of the day. And that's how I like to start my day. But I was so impressed, and I totally agree with you, Raj. And Kelly and I, my wife Kelly and I talked about it after I went through the program, Leaving the Legacy for the first time. I told Kelly, I said, wow, this is the most amazing program. I think all of Bob's programs are fantastic, but this one had a huge impact on me just because you're getting all of those principles, but you're getting Bob over the top of it, and it's just fantastic. So I love everything that Bob does, and if you want to up your game, you've got to up kind of what the standard that you're setting for yourself. And like Raj said, if you're not studying every day, you're not putting yourself on the trajectory to get where you want to go. I've been studying personally every morning. I rarely miss. A lot of the mornings I'm on the phone with Whitney and Phil, and we're in an accountability group, and we're talking every day. But we're also programming in our mind. And when you do this stuff, it's just a muscle, right? It's just like going to the gym. You're going to the gym because you want to build muscle or you want to get in better shape. And so you're doing the work, but you've got to do the work with the programs. If you leave the event and you don't plug into some of this stuff, what's going to happen? It's like a rubber band, right? We're just going to bounce right back to where we were. If you invest in yourself and you get the programs and you start digesting the information, it's going to keep you on the right track, and you're going to continue to build the momentum. Everything's momentum. So if you want the momentum, you've got to invest in the programs. I can tell you the money we spend in the programs and working directly with Bob, I can't even put a figure on. I can't, as Bob said, we started working with Bob and Peggy a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, and I can't even look back and see how far we've come. We're totally different people. We were doing well back then, but it's just taken off like a rocket ship since we got into this program and working with Bob and his stuff. And so every dime that you spend in this is going to come back tenfold, and it's all about personal development. If you want to win, you've got to invest in yourself. And these programs, when you really, especially when I went through this, I couldn't believe the value that was jam-packed into this program, Leaving the Legacy, for what they're asking for. I mean, really, when you really you can't put a price on it. And so think about investing in this. Raj, we didn't plan this out. He just asked me to come up. But I love this stuff so much, and that's what you're getting the juice, you're getting I just love this information. And if you will invest in yourself and continue like you're doing here, and continue the momentum coming out of here, it's going to keep you on the right path.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, that's great. Thank you, Arash. Thank you, Bob. So for those of you that are interested in investing in yourself, just fill out this form, and you can take it right over to where Gina's sitting over on the side of the room. And you can do that a little bit later. Don't do it now. You know, I've come to learn something. These bright lights and hot flashes, they don't go well together. So it's my awareness. We need some cooling air conditioners up here. We're going to talk about your goal. And we witnessed a goal achievement at the VIP lunch today. So today we're at lunch, and as Bob does at the VIP lunches, is he addresses questions that are asked by the audience. And Gina will ask him the questions, Bob answers them. And she had one question, which I think was left for the end. And it was a question by a lovely young woman, 14 years of age, who's sitting here in the front of the room named Adasia. And Adasia, yeah, let's give Adasia a round of applause. So Adasia's had a goal to have a puppy for a long, long time. So she wrote a question, Gina read it, and it was a question something like, how do I hypnotize my mom? And how do I hypnotize my mom? So obviously she understands about opening up the subconscious mind and planting a seed of an idea. How do I hypnotize my mom so that I can get a puppy? And so Bob said, how long have you wanted a puppy? And she was like, my whole life. And her mom was telling me that she used to want guinea pigs as well. And she used to draw pictures of guinea pigs, give them names, and put them on her door. But she's wanted a puppy for a long time. And her parents weren't going to get her a puppy. They have 4 children. I mean, it's a busy household. And so Bob said, if you want a puppy, I'll buy you a puppy. And Bob's buying her a puppy. Isn't that amazing? It's a great story. I want to share with you a story of a goal that I had set for myself. Because when we're talking about goals, we're going to talk about stretching yourself. We're going to talk about really bringing out a greater and grander version of who you are. And I'll share you a story, and then we'll walk through the slides to really bring it home. So a number of years ago, I was married, and the marriage was going to change form. And it was going to become a divorce. And so my husband and I at the time, Charles and I were living out in the country in Quebec, in rural Quebec. Do we have any Quebecers in the room? One? All right. We were in Cantley, Quebec, just across the river from Ottawa. And so we were living in Cantley, Quebec, and we decided we're going to get divorced. Well, I set a goal, and I wrote it on my goal card, that I am so happy and grateful now that I own my beautiful home, and I described it. And I had that on my goal card, and I had it put in my pocket. Well, my husband, Charles, was not into any of these materials. As a matter of fact, he thought it was pretty stupid. That might be an indicator of why that marriage became a divorce. But anyways, he wasn't into goals, and so when we were talking about what are we going to do next, because we put our house on the market, I was saying I was going to go buy a house. And he didn't really know what he was going to do, and that was fine. So I would go and I'd look at homes. So if there was an open house on a weekend of a home that was of interest, I would go and look at that home. If there were builders that had show homes, I would go to the show homes and I would just look. What I was doing was I was showing the universe that I was serious about owning a home. But what was happening for us is that our home was not selling. It had been put on the market and it wasn't selling. It was around the time where Quebec was threatening to separate from the rest of the country. And so as a result of that, a lot of the English-speaking people that were in the province of Quebec were leaving Quebec. And so the real estate market was really in a bad spot. And so we couldn't sell our house. We decided, well, we're going to drop the price. Still couldn't sell the house. We dropped the price again. Now, the equity that we had in our home was just going down, 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 down. I mean, I don't think we could have given the thing away. And so it didn't allow me to lose sight of my goal. I still had my goal card. And as Bob had said, you touch your goal card, you carry it with you. And it puts a message in your brain. It impregnates a message in your brain that's, and I would pull it out and I read my goal card and I would see my son and I living in our beautiful home, and I just had the picture and I held that picture regardless of what was going on in the outer world. And so one day, and months and months and months were going by, one day I was driving down the highway and I heard an ad on the radio for something called the CHEO, which stands for Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, CHEO Dream of a Lifetime Draw. And the way that it worked is you could buy a ticket for $100, and the prize was a beautiful home that had 4 bedrooms. It was a double-car garage. It was exactly what I described. So when I heard about this draw, I bought a ticket, and then I went to see the house, because the house was open. Anybody could go see it, because the CHEO Foundation was looking at doing a fundraiser, right? They're building funds, so they wanted people to go there. It was open 7 days a week. You could go visit that house anytime between 12 noon and 8 o'clock at night. So I would go visit this house, and I decided it was going to be my home. And so anytime I went into that home, what I would do is I would imagine, using my mental faculty, imagination, I would imagine that I am now living in my home. So as I'd walk through the door, the front door, because the door was unlocked, I would walk through the front door and I would imagine I'm coming home. And then I would go into the family room and I'd sit on the couch. And I would just sit there and I'd touch the furniture to feel it, to put the sense more vividly into my imagination. And then I'd go in the kitchen, I would sit down. Now there was always a lady there who was selling tickets. So I would sit with her at the kitchen table, having a conversation with her, and I could see behind, certain things out the window, down the street, and I would imagine this is what it's going to be like when I live in my home. And then I'd get up and I'd go in the dining room, and I would sit at the dining room table, and I'd imagine having formal family dinners here. And then I went to the living room, and I sat in the living room, sat on the furniture there. And then I went upstairs. There were 4 bedrooms upstairs, a couple more bathrooms, and I went upstairs and I chose which room would be my son Michel's room. And I just went all through the house. Then I went into the master bedroom, and they had this beautiful sleigh bed in the bedroom, and I got up and laid on the bed. Now nowadays when they have the CHEO draw, they don't let anyone go on the furniture. I may have ruined it for everyone, I don't know, but I was fully embraced in all of this experience. So I'd lay on the bed and I would just imagine myself going to sleep at night and waking up in the morning. And then I went into the ensuite bathroom, and it had a big Roman tub, and I got in the tub. I literally got in the tub and I laid down, closed my eyes, and I imagined that I was having a bubble bath. And so I saw that, and I didn't do that once. I did not do that twice. I did it over and over and over again. And it was a couple months that went by, and they had the draw for the winner, and it was December 7th, and I'll never forget it, because Dr. John Goodman won that house. Now you thought I was going to say that I won the house, right? So a couple months go by. Now let me just also add a couple things. One of the things that I did, you see, Genevieve Behrend wrote an incredible book that Bob recommends called Your Invisible Power. In that book, Genevieve Behrend suggests you carefully examine your picture. You see, I had carefully examined my picture. I saw us in that house. And so what I did on my goal card was, I wrote, I am so happy and grateful now that I live at, and I put that address on my goal card. That's my address. That's where I'm living. So when Dr. John Goodman won the house, I didn't throw my goal away. I just thought, well, there's another way, another home. You see, that's what happens with a lot of people is they get really close to their goal, and it doesn't happen the way they think it's supposed to happen, and then they throw away their goal. Don't throw away your goal. We don't know how it's going to happen. That, I would say, is probably one of the biggest and best lessons I've ever learned from Bob Proctor. You set a goal. You become emotionally involved in it. You do not have to know how. And so a few months went by. I saw my goal card. I'm so happy and grateful I'm living in this beautiful home. And I had it described. I had the address off at that point. And I had gone to visit my brother at his cottage in the Haliburton region. And it was the middle of the night, and a very weird thing happened, and I'm sure Louise can relate to this. I woke up in the middle of the night, and I heard a message. And the message said, go to the house. That's what the message said. I heard it very clearly, and I knew exactly which house it was talking about. It had been months since the draw. As a matter of fact, 4 months since Dr. John Goodman won that house. But when I heard that message, go to the house, I knew exactly what it was talking about. So I was driving back from my brother's cottage, and I took a little detour off the highway, went into the neighborhood where the house was, pulled onto the street. Sure enough, there's a for sale sign on the lawn. Now, let me just give you a little understanding of where I was at. Charles and I still had not sold our house. We had not dropped the price again, but we hadn't sold our house. I didn't have any money to buy a house. But as Bob shares, and he wrote a story about this in You Were Born Rich, you don't need any money until you've made a decision. And so I see this for sale sign on the lawn. Now, Nick Lavoie, who I mentioned yesterday, lived down the street from that house. And so I drove over to Nick's house, and I said to her, I said, I'm going to call the real estate agent. I'm going to go see that house. And her husband said, what for? I said, what do you mean, what for? And he said, you don't have any money, and you've been in that house so many times that you know it better than anyone. And I said, well, the real estate agent doesn't know that. It's true. He didn't ask me if I had any money. He didn't ask me if I'd been in there before. I just called him and said, I want to see the house. And he said, I'll meet you there. So Nick said, I'll go with you. So we get in my car and we drive over to the house. And as he's putting the key in the door to unlock it, I'm thinking, these two, the realtor and Nick, are visiting me at my house. So I stepped right back into visualization. And now this time, because we're viewing it, it's for sale, sitting on the furniture, cruising around the room, fully embodying the experience of owning this home. Not having any idea how I was going to make this happen. And so I had a nice visit, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to buy that house. I don't know how, I'm buying that house. Then I asked the realtor, I said, could I bring my son back? Michelle was 2.5 at the time. And I wanted to see him in the house. I wanted to complete the picture even more. So I said to the realtor, can I come back with my son? He said, sure. You know, it's not uncommon to have a second visit when you're purchasing a home. So I went back to the house. I brought my little son, Michelle, and he's running around. I'm creating an even greater picture of him living in the house. And what was wonderful about the street is there was a park just a few houses away from where we were. And at the end of the street, it was a cul-de-sac, there were trails that went off where you could ride your bike or go for little walks in the woods. And I thought, oh, it'd be so much fun to do that with my son. And so I'm now in the point of trying to figure this out, thinking, I'm gonna make this happen. And I'm driving along, and I always listen to audios in my car. And remember yesterday I mentioned about cassettes. I'd worn out all of Bob's cassettes. So I'm listening to some more cassettes at that time in my car, and I was listening to a cassette on stretching, which is really what we're going to talk about now, stretching. Stretching is where you think you can't, but you must. Not for what you get, but for who you become in the process. That's what stretching does for you. It's not the goal. It's not getting the house. Who do you become in the process? I'm listening to this as I'm pulling up in front of the house. No coincidence. I grabbed my phone, my cell phone, which was like a brick at that time, and I called the realtor and I said, meet me at the house. Because in that moment, an idea popped in my mind, an idea that hadn't been there before. And so he said, sure, I'll be there in 10 minutes. The realtor met me at the house. We went in the house, we sat at the dining room table. And I said, here's what I want to do. I'm going to give you a check right now for $2,000. I didn't have $2,000. Seriously didn't. Now, I'm not in the habit of writing bad checks. I am not suggesting you write bad checks. I had a Visa, and I knew that if I went to the bank and took a cash advance on my Visa, I could put it into my bank account to cover that check. And again, I'm not saying go buy a house with a cash advance on your Visa, but that's what I knew I would do. So I gave him a check for $2,000, and I said, here's the offer. I'm going to move in 2 months. I'll give him 10% of the purchase price the day I move in, and I had no idea how I was going to come up with that. And then I want to occupy it for 6 months and pay an occupancy fee, and then close the deal and pay the balance on December 1st. Now that idea just came to my mind. I was open and aware. I was open to ideas how this would happen. It popped in my mind, and I went with it. Did I know what I was doing? No. Was I freaking out inside? Absolutely. Absolutely. I can still feel it when I think about it. But this is what I know. I know that when you make a commitment, like a solid commitment, you will follow through. You will follow through. It's like that quote by William Hutchison Murray that says, when one commits themselves, providence moves. Everything that's required for the fulfillment of that desire is going to be drawn to you. And I had faith in that. That's what I chose to believe in, is the faith in that. So I made the offer. And Dr. John Goodman didn't want the house. He already had a house. And I wrote up the deal that I would get all the furniture. I mean, it had towels on the racks. It had bedding on the beds. I mean, it was beautifully decorated. It was beautifully furnished, because that was all part of the Chio Dream of a Lifetime package. I wanted the house like that, so that Charles could keep the matrimonial home, which obviously wasn't selling. He could keep all that furniture, and I could simply move into the new home. And so I asked Charles, I said, are you okay if you just keep the matrimonial home? We'll put it in your name, you keep all the furniture? Of course he said yes. And he never asked me how I was doing this deal. And I never told anyone. I didn't tell anyone, because if I told people what I was doing, what would they have said? Exactly, you're crazy. And so I had a deal on the house. Then I'm hyperventilating, like, holy crap, what have I done? What have I done? Okay, so when that came up, we've got to switch to a better idea. You know how Bob uses the stickman concept yesterday, and he was showing us the left side with the negative side and the right side with the positive side? I would be going down that left side and have to switch myself out of that, get out of that. That's not what you want. I'd notice it's there, I had the awareness to know it was there, and I'd switch myself out. Breathing, calm, seeing us living in that home, enjoying it for years. So one day I went out for lunch with a good friend of mine named Val. And Val was a very positive thinking woman, very successful woman. And we were sitting on Spark Street on a park bench at lunchtime one day. And I told Val what I had done. And I knew Val would be someone that would support it. And so she said, well, do you have any money in a retirement plan? And at that point, I hadn't put much money in a retirement. And I had put some away earlier, but that, as far as I was concerned, was locked away until retirement. And I was certainly not ready to retire. And I said, well, I got a little bit of money over there. Why do you ask? And she said, well, a retirement plan is an investment. A home is an investment. Why don't you just cash it in and put it on the house? And I said, I don't think I have that much. And she says, well, just find out. So I called this guy who had put the money into the investment account, and I said, I'd like to withdraw the money that I have in my retirement plan. And he said, okay. And he said, if I do it in increments, it'll save on the tax rather than do it as one lump sum. So he took it out in increments, and the exact amount that I received was what was required to move into that home. Remember, I promised to give 10% the day I moved in? That was exactly to the dollar, the exact amount. Now I'm living in the home. I've made a commitment, I have to follow through. I'm living in the home, I haven't paid for it yet. I remember I paid a 10% when I moved in, and now I'm paying an occupancy for 6 months until I can close the deal, because I figured it would give me time. And so I'm in the house. I was working for a company that had just opened up to offer dedicated access to this thing called the World Wide Web. Now, a lot of people couldn't even spell www back then. I was in there at the early stages of the World Wide Web, and the company that I was working for was selling dedicated access, 64K and 128K ISDN lines, if anyone knows what that is. It's these small little connections to the internet. And so I was working for this company that was selling this service. So I had a job, I had an income, and I was getting a certain guaranteed income every month, but I had no idea I was going to come out with all the money to pay for the rest of this home. So while I was in the home, I would find myself going through a process of feeling that fear come welling up, where you can hardly breathe, or you're almost shaking, and I would start to think, oh my God, what's going to happen? I'm going to be out in the street. Where am I going to go with my son? What have I done? That money that I had in retirement, I'm going to lose all that. And I started to think about what I didn't want. Now, is that going to serve me? No. So I developed a process to switch automatically out of what I didn't want over to what I wanted. And I used this question. And the question was, what would you love? What would you love? The moment you ask that question, what would you love, puts you in a better frame of mind. It puts you in a better physiology. It gets you away from thinking about what you don't want, over to thinking about what you want. So I'd ask myself, what would you love? Okay, well, I'd love to own the home. I'd love to be able to pay for it on December 1st and have champagne bottles being popped and party and just celebrate. All right, what's that going to feel like? And that would be the dialogue that I'd have with myself. What is that going to feel like? What is that going to feel like? And when I connect to how it feels, I would relax. My shoulders would go down. It would put me into alignment with the goods that I desired. And then what I did was I went to the bank one day, and in Canada at the time, we could get $1,000 bills. And I didn't have a lot of money in my bank account, but I did have $1,000 at one point. So I went to the bank, to the teller, and I said, I'd like to withdraw $1,000, but I want you to give me a $1,000 bill. So she said, sure. So she gave me a $1,000 bill. I went to the office, and I photocopied that $1,000 bill. Now, I know that's illegal. I didn't know it at the time. Anyways. So I went to the office, and I put these $1,000 bill, and then I photocopied another one, and I put like 4 or 5 on a sheet, and I just started photocopying sheets of these $1,000 bills. Now, I didn't do both sides. I just did one side. I think it's really illegal if you do both sides. So I did just one side, but I printed enough, which was the amount that I needed to close the deal on December 1st. And then what I did was, just like Wendy, with her stacks of hundreds, she had this yesterday. I said, are they real? She's like, yeah. So like Wendy, I put them in a stack like this, and I would count them. I'd count them every morning and every night. Every morning and every night, these $1,000 bills. And it would really put me in alignment with feeling what it felt like to have all that cash. Thank you, Wendy, by the way. Money's meant to circulate, Wendy. So I would count these $1,000 bills every morning, every night. And then I got to a point I thought, I'm going to staple them onto Bristol boards. I went to the Business Depot store, and I stapled them all on Bristol boards, and I put them on the ceiling in my bedroom. So I have these Bristol boards all over the ceiling in my bedroom. Val really liked this idea, by the way, Phil. She said she's going to do this. So I put this all over the ceiling, and when I go to bed at night, I would see it, and I would feel what it felt like to have all the cash. Well, the company that I was working for at the time decided to go public. And it was at the time that, I don't know if any of you remember when Netscape went public. Netscape had gone public, and it was the first internet company or technology company of that kind to ever go public. And it had a good run. And so the company I was working for decided to go public. Well, as an employee, we got to have options. I don't even know what the right terms are, actually. I don't play in the stock market. I don't really know anything about the stock market. So I had to educate myself. Well, what does this really mean? You know, as an employee, I can get stock, and like, can I sell it when the company goes public? They're like, yeah. Like the day it goes public? Yeah. Okay, great. So I had started to save some money, but a tiny, tiny fraction of what I needed. Like seriously, a very small fraction. So I took all of that and I put it on the stock. It's kind of like roulette. It's Wendy's game, right? It's just like, let's just see what comes back. So I put it all on this stock. They were scheduled to do the IPO in October that year. So I thought, okay, well, the closing date for my house is December 1st. If it doesn't work, well, I still got a little bit of time. So we're getting closer to October. I'm feeling a little anxious, but using my technique, what would you love, Peggy? What would you love? And I mean, there would be some days I would do that 83 times a day. 83, I mean, whatever it took, I would put myself back into the calm state. So the company was scheduled to go public in October. They decided to move the IPO date, move it back. They moved it to November 26th. So I go to the broker and I said to him, okay, so if the company goes public today and I sell my shares today, when do I get the money? He said 4 days later, the 30th of November. So the lawyer who was doing the close on the house had contacted me and said, Peggy, we need to have the money for your closing. Could you bring it in on the 30th of November? I said, yeah, no problem. So the company went public on November the 26th. The stock went skyrocketing. Thank you, God. I sold it at the peak and had all the cash 4 days later, and I did have champagne bottles being popped, and Nick was there on December the 1st. But like that audio said, the goals aren't for what you get. It's for who you become in the process. That was such an incredible growth experience for me, to go through that. I had to condition myself to get out of what I didn't want over to what I did want. We've got to create those patterns. We've got to create the habits. And I was studying, just like Bob Pascuzzi was talking about earlier, I was studying every single day. All I did was fill my mind. I was a complete addict for these materials in a very good way, because it was supporting me. It was helping me build my level of awareness so that I could do more and be more in the world. And of course, from that experience, I've got several other manifestation stories of real estate as well. And if we have time, I might be able to share some with you. Tommy, just so you know, this clock says 90 minutes, so I really have no idea how much time I have here. So I want you to really think about what you want. Now, how many of you are really clear on what you want? How many do not know what they want? Just a couple hands. All right. Well, one of the ways of figuring out what you want is to think about what you don't want as well. Or to just step into imagination. You know, I'll share another story with you in a moment on someone who set a goal that seemed completely unreal, that they would achieve this goal, but they did it anyway. And we hear story and story and story about people that have done just that. But what's required is to think and to make a decision. What would you love? You see, when Charles and I owned that home out in the country, and the real estate market was in a real bad place at that time, there was no evidence that we were going to sell that home. I had no idea how I was going to buy another home, but I made a decision that I would. I became very clear on what I wanted and became very clear on that. Now, Bob talked about this yesterday. He talked about an A-type goal is a goal that really represents our present results. And if we think about it's really an A-type goal is a goal that we've achieved before, we know how to achieve. And a B-type goal is a goal that we also know it might be a little bit of a stretch, but we're aware of how we're going to do it. And we're going to be talking about some C-type goals in a minute. But really what it comes down to is a fantasy. Like when we start thinking about what we would love to do, and I look over here and I see Martha. Where's Martha? There she is. And Martha's goal, and I won't share what it is, Martha, with everyone in the room because I haven't asked you permission, but at one point when you had that goal, it was simply a fantasy, correct? Phil Goldfine, when you had the goal to win an Oscar, that was a fantasy, originally. And that's typically where they start. They start with a fantasy, and then from there, they move to theory. This is where they become even more of an idea because we're giving it conscious attention. And we're using our conscious mind. That's our thinking mind. That's our reasoning mind. We're entertaining an idea. And all we need to do is ask ourselves this question: am I able? Now, again, you don't have to know how. It's a great lesson. You don't have to know how, but are you able to achieve that goal? And Bob says there's no limit to what we can accomplish. And then a more important question is, are you willing? You ask yourself, am I willing? Am I willing to do this? These stretching experiences will feel very uncomfortable. The more you stretch, the more uncomfortable it's going to feel. But the growth and the achievement, the accomplishment, what it does for you is extraordinary. It'll really change your life. So that theory, when we make that decision, then becomes the goal. We decide that's what we're going to accomplish. And then when we impress it on our subconscious mind through repetition. You see, I had my goal card. I was carrying my goal card with me, and I would read it all the time. I'm so happy and grateful now that I live at my beautiful home located at. And I had the address. And I would impress. Bob says there's 2 known ways to change a paradigm. What are they? Conscious space. Yeah, repetition of that idea. And the other way is through an emotional impact. Doesn't recommend that way. We're going to talk about a repetition of the idea. So once it becomes a goal, then we see the fact. when we feel it in our heart. Bob often says if you can think it in your head, in your mind, if you think it in your mind, you can hold it in your hand. If you think it in your mind, you can hold it in your hand. And then we realize that we can create even bigger and better fantasies. We can do so much more. I love that slide where Bob talks about, he has the horizontal lines talking about frequencies. He has the X, this is where you are. Puts an X above, says this is where you are, or this is where you want to go. And then he explains that whole process, and he says afterwards, you realize later that you could have just as easily gone here on a higher point. And earlier today, he had a quote from Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich, that said, no more effort is required to aim high in life, to demand abundance and prosperity, than it is to accept misery and poverty. No more effort? No more effort. You can make bigger and better fantasies. Most people are playing small. I want to invite you to stretch yourself, especially while you're here, especially while you're in this environment. This is the perfect environment to do it. Bigger and better fantasies and fantasy. And this is what's called the creative process. This is what Thomas Troward writes about. This is the creative process. And as Bob says, this is not rocket science. It's relatively easy or simple, but it's not easy. The reason why it's not easy is because of our paradigms, right? We're conditioned a certain way, but we can change those paradigms. That's what we're here for. Paradigm shifts while we're here. So we've got A-type goals, which is really present result goals, what you think you can do, and then the C-type goals are the ones that you're really going to get emotionally involved in something that you really, really, really want. What would you love? What would you love? It's such a great question to ask yourself. What is it that you'd really love? To have, do, be. This is really what separates the achievers. There's a section in the workbook where Bob wrote about how goal achievers are people that get more done in a year than most people get done in a lifetime. And I was reading that earlier. Val and I were sitting at the back of the room, and I was reading that, and I said to her, I said, Bob taught me how to set and achieve goals. That was one of the things I learned very early, over 40 years ago when I started to study him. And one of the things that I've done since then is I wrote and released 3 books within a year, and I sold out all first editions. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well. So you decide what do you want, but most people just dismiss it. They might even think about it. They'll think, oh, I would really love to do that. But on the heel of that thought comes the thought of, how am I going to do that? I don't have the means. I don't have the money. I don't have the way. I don't have the context. I don't have the education. I don't have the experience. Excuses. But they're paradigms. They feel very, very real. Very real. I could have easily not bought that home. Just as easily. I didn't have the money. I didn't have the means. I didn't know how I was going to do it. But I didn't dismiss it. Most people are going to dismiss it. And they're going to dismiss it because of their paradigms. Now, an A-type goal is a goal that we know we can do. B-type goal is what we think we can do. But quite often people go back and forth. Why? Because they want to step back into comfort. I heard this quote from Bob many years ago, and it's a fabulous quote, which really illustrates what we're talking about here. Here's what Bob said. It's better to step forward into growth than to step back into safety. It's better to step forward into growth than back into safety. We want to be stepping forward into growth. And you've got to know where you're going and know that you will get there. Not how you're going to get there, just know that you will get there. And yesterday I suggested to you to write down a question. And the question that I asked you to write down is the following. Now that your dream is fulfilled, how do you feel? Now that your dream is fulfilled, how do you feel? What does that question do for you? It causes you to feel that you're already there, right? Now that you're a New York Times bestselling author, Rachel, how does that feel? Fabulous, exactly. So you know where you're going and know that you will get there. Don't know how, but you will get there. You will get the Grammy. You will get the gold medal. You'll break the world record in swimming. I'm certain Phil knows that he's going to get there. There's not a doubt in his mind. But you've got to use your mental faculty called will. You have to have the will to do it. It's really important. And I'm going to share another story with you about a gentleman who was an Olympic swimmer, a guy by the name of Mark Tewksbury. Mark Tewksbury had a goal to win a gold medal in the Olympics. And he trained very hard. And even though as a teenager, his friends were heading out to the bars or they're starting to party, he would get invited to go out and party too, but he would decline. There was a part of him that wanted to go and hang out with his buddies and do all these things, but he'd say, no, I have to be in the pool tomorrow morning at 4 a.m. And he trained very hard. And he earned his way to compete in the 1988 Olympics in Seoul, Korea. And he went to the Olympics, and he was competing in the 100-meter backstroke for men, and he was competing in the relay for men. And he won a silver medal. He won a silver medal with the men's relay team. That was not his goal. That was not the goal that he set for himself. He went back home. He lived in Calgary, Alberta. He went back home, and everybody was like, congratulations, Mark. You won a silver medal. And he said, yeah, I'm happy about that. But that's not my goal. I'm going back. They're like, what do you mean you're going back? I'm going back in 4 years, and I'm going to win the gold. You're going to be 4 years older. Like when you're competing in the Olympics, quite often age has a role in who you're competing against and their level of ability. And he was not favored to win. So he decided he's going to earn his way to go back to the Olympics in 1992, which was being held in Barcelona, Spain, and he was going to win a gold. And that's all he saw. I see only the objective. The obstacles give way. I see only the objective. The obstacles give way. And he trained even harder. But he still wasn't going to be, he was not expected to win. There were other swimmers that they felt were more likely to win. There was a Russian swimmer, a swimmer from the United States. They were expected to win. And so he flew over to Barcelona, Spain, to get ready for the Olympics. And the day before his meet, his competition, he was able to get into where the pool was. He wasn't supposed to be in there. No one else was in there, but he got in there. He managed to get a janitor to let him in. And he went into where the pool was, and no one was there. But he could see where the stands were. And he could see where the lanes were in the pool. And he went up to the pool, and he just stood. Now, 100-meter backstroke, you go off the edge like this. And he decided, okay, this is going to be my lane. And he stood there, and he imagined the gun going off and diving into the pool. And he saw himself swimming, touch the other end, turn around, come back, touch the end, and come out of the pool. And he looked over to where the stands were and where the sign was, and he saw gold, Mark Tewksbury. And he saw the Canadian fans waving the Canadian flags in the stands. He saw it all where? In his mind, in his imagination. He was living the moment in advance. And so the next day he came back, and it's time for the race. And they have a ready room. That's where they put the athletes in a ready room. And they put them all in there. And he got to the ready room a little bit late, and all the other swimmers were in there. And he's starting to lose it. What am I doing here? Like, there's the Russian there, and he's got a towel over his head, and he's speaking in Russian, and he's doing affirmations or whatever he's doing. And then there's another German guy over here, and he's like laser focused. And you could tell these guys were like in the zone. And he wasn't in the zone. He was in like freaking out. He's like, okay, get it together, Mark, get it together. He sat himself down, and he calmed himself down. And then they marched them all out to the pool. And he stood in his lane. The gun went off. Mark dove into the pool, and he started swimming. He touched the other end, and he noticed something directly beside him. He noticed an ankle. Now, if you're swimming in a competition and you're seeing an ankle, what does that mean? The guy beside you, he doesn't know where the other ones are, the guy beside you is way ahead of you. So what he did was he started to say these words, "Go now. Go now." And with every stroke that he took, he would go now, go now, go now. And then that ankle became an elbow. He noticed he was pushing ahead. He touched the wall. They have sensors in the wall that will tell you who won, who touched first. And he touched the wall, touched the sensor, came out of the pool, and looked up and saw gold, Mark Tewksbury. But I love that story because it really illustrates how he wasn't expected to win. He went against what the norms were. He made a decision, and regardless of what anyone else said, he was only seeing one outcome. He wasn't allowing anything else to get in his way. Even though there were other swimmers that were favored to win, he saw himself winning. And at the last moment, he just pushed a little harder. And sometimes that's what we have to do, is just push a little harder. And he won the gold. Is that 21 seconds? Okay. I got 21 seconds to teach the terror barrier. Oh, wait, 3, 2, 1. Okay, forget it. All right, this is the terror barrier. And frankly, the story that I told you about the house was really an example of the terror barrier. But let me explain this, because this idea, this concept, has really meant a lot to me, especially when you get up against that wall, if you will, of just not thinking you can do it, or not knowing how you're going to do it, or thinking you want to step back into safety. So this terror barrier really comes from the understanding that the X represents our current way of thinking, our current paradigms that we have. And of course, our results are an expression of what's going on within us right now, right? Our results are simply that. And so if we start to entertain a new idea, a Y idea, whatever that is, a new goal, a stretch goal, we start to bring it into our consciousness through our awareness, through our reasoning factor, and then we get to decide, are we going to accept it or reject it? Now, if we decide we're going to accept that idea into our subconscious mind, a conflict begins. You know how Bob had that slide earlier today that says, your paradigms will put up a royal battle. Your paradigm is going to put up a royal battle. I love that quote. I think it's one of the most valuable quotes that I've ever heard, because it gives you that understanding of what's going to go on within you. What's going to go on within you is a battle. And you got to win that battle. You got to be the one that's going to feed the side of your why idea. And then once you break through that and you get to the point where you see it as if it's vividly real, as if it's already done, as if it is now yours, you've broken through the terror barrier. But it takes time. It takes practice, because your paradigms are very strong. You see, I often say paradigms are like the good news and the bad news. The good news is that when you develop really good paradigms, really strong supportive paradigms, they will take you anywhere you want to go. But the bad news, or the challenging part, is that if you have negative paradigms from childhood or from adulthood or from whatever, from experienced people build paradigms, that they're strong. They're really strong, so it's going to be a challenge to overcome them. But when you break through the terror barrier, which is really what I did with that house, is what's possible. So we call that bondage. When we just keep thinking we're just going to do the same old thing, we're just going to keep producing the same results. There's no growth in that. There's no satisfaction in that. We grow when we're stretching ourselves. Yes, it's going to feel uncomfortable, but what you get is so much more. But it's not what you get, it's who you become in the process. And then you get to benefit from the goal as well. So we're looking at the bondage as having the X idea, the same paradigms we're playing over and over and over again. Like my ex-husband, Charles, used to say to me when I would go look at homes, why are you going to look at houses? And I said, because I'm going to buy a house. And he said to me, well, you don't have any money and we haven't sold ours. And of course, I didn't really have any answer to that. It's like, I don't have to know how. I don't need the money. He didn't understand any of that concept. And so I had to be in this place of just focusing on what I wanted. So I entertain the why idea. I bring it into my conscious mind and play with that idea. But the paradigm would try and throw it out. It's going to try and dismiss it. It doesn't want you to. You've got to keep conditioning yourself to bring in that idea repeatedly over and over and over and over and over again until you get past that terror barrier, until you get to the place. And I love it when Bob talks about that's your new home, where you reside. What's the new home where you reside? It's you living in this space of your goals are already done. Now that your dream is fulfilled, how do you feel? That's your new home. That's where you live. And I love this quote by Joseph Campbell. He says, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek." That is the truth. The cave you fear to enter. I was afraid when I went for that goal, but it held a treasure. It changed my life in every way, every wonderful way. I became a greater and grander version of myself. As a result of that, I conditioned myself. I established some new paradigms. And I realized what was possible, to take the impossible, which is what Anders teaches, and made it possible. Now, have any of you ever had an experience like that, where you had a goal that was impossible or others thought it was impossible that you went out and achieved? Has anyone had an experience like that? I want to have some sharing going on in the audience right now. Tommy, this is the part where you can take Bob's computer away.
So you want me to...
Emma, yes, please. Oh, I'm sorry. You didn't realize I was going to actually come down here and ask you?
No,
are you
that's
okay
fine.
with
I'll
that?
I'll share with everybody. It's
okay,
fine.
thank you.
So,
hold this up nice and high.
Oh, perfect. So my name is Guillermo. I come from Miami.
Can you all hear him?
And
yes, okay.
Yes. You guys can hear me fine, right? So basically, I have this goal and this vision to create an application for Bob and to really transfer the way he delivers his material. And my whole focus and my whole goal was to pitch it to him personally and get that moment to give it to him right in his hand for him to understand what my purpose was. And I basically talked to the entire PGI team until I finally got my chance just minutes before this. And he literally signed my notebook and gave me his personal email.
Wow.
For me to tell him, and I thought that was amazing. I mean, I literally flew my family here to tell him what my vision was.
That's
and to
amazing.
really transform this company, to be honest with you.
I love that. All right, good for you. Thank you. Congratulations. That's pretty exciting. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Jennifer Nod, and I had a goal. I was stuck in New Mexico for a while, and I was thinking, well, I have to do something while I'm here. So I saw in the paper, I'm an actress, and I saw in the paper it said auditioning for the Civic Light Opera, and that you had to sing. And so I had never sang in public, so I learned a song, and I thought, well, I'm not in LA, I'll just go there, I'll make a fool out of myself, and they'll send me home, but I can say I did it. So I went and did that, and they told me not to leave after, and I thought, well, I'm really tired, and I just, but I stayed, and they gave me a part. So
Woo!
My point is that I thought they were crazy, but I had a really good time, and they asked me to stay for more, so.
I love it. That's great. Thank you very much. That is a great story. Who else? All right. Thank you. Please. Your feet hurt?
No. Okay, so about 13 years ago, I was recently moved to Atlanta, and I just had my daughter, and I wasn't working because y'all know daycare gets expensive. And so I was determined to own my own business, and I was working at a daycare. And at the time, I was like, okay, I know I can do this. I had no money, and everyone who I was like, hey, I really want to own my own business, they were like, oh, well, you don't have any money, so it's not going to happen. Well, eventually, I started to save parts of my paycheck, and I pieced it off, and I turned the townhome that I was living in into a daycare, and then eventually opened my own daycare. So I turned something that really was nothing into something.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. That is great. Thank you. Oh. Perfect. We'll wrap up with you, and then I'll go back and do the rest of the good stuff.
Hey guys, my name's Sandra Runamato. When I was a little girl, I was a tomboy and I really liked auto racing. And I remember learning Mario Andretti's name when I was about 4 or 5. And he's an icon. He is a legend. Everybody knows Mario Andretti?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So my friend's husband took me pacing one day. And so you rent a track and you go out and you race cars. So I was telling another friend about that story. I was getting really passionate about it, and I told her, after 8 laps, my t-shirt was sweating. Like, my whole t-shirt was full of sweat, and I was so excited. And she's looking at me like, you like that? And I said, like it? If I could get on a racetrack for just 2 laps with Mario Andretti, you could shoot me dead, and I would die a happy woman. So
don't give that any energy, okay?
So luckily, she didn't have me locked up. But within a year and a half, she ended up in the auto racing industry and hospitality. Long story short, not only did I get to meet Mario Andretti, but he took me for a pace car ride, which is 2 laps at the Toronto Molson Indy.
Wow, good for you. That's a cool story. Is there anyone else that has just burning to share their story? All right, I knew there was one more. I felt it. I felt the energy in the room, and I was drawn over to you.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
My name is Sabrina Wright, and I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I came in October, and I met my friend Danielle here, and Bob told us to tell what we wanted, okay? So I told Danielle, I told the whole table, really, in October, that I wanted to open up a juice bar. So I went home, and immediately after I left the event, and I got the building for the juice bar. Then I was just like you. I was like, holy crap, what did I just do? Because I don't have any money to open up a juice bar. So how am I going to make this happen? So I came up with a plan, and I had a budget and business plan and all this stuff. And so I began to make the moves to get everything done. And then I kept hitting the terror barrier because every time I got ready to open up, something happened. Like, now I need a grease trap. Now I need to redo the electrical parts. I'm like, okay, the budget that I had, I'm way over budget at this point. What am I going to do? And so I kept visualizing, and every time I was visualized, come back for the inspection, it still wouldn't pass. Something else would come up. So I'm like, oh my God. I started feeling like I just wanted to give up and just let it go, but I didn't. Whatever they said needed to happen, I went back to the drawing board and kept visualizing and kept trying to figure out what I was gonna do. Lo and behold, at the end of this month, we open up. Yay!
What's it called?
It's called Magnificent Smoothies in Douglasville.
Magnificent Smoothies.
Yes, and I'm having a big grand opening in November, and my friends are coming, right? Y'all said y'all was coming? Okay.
Are you gonna have a franchise?
Yes, I do want the franchise, and that's what I was just telling them as well, because we like, that's
awesome.
tight as goals. So I was like, okay, at first I was thinking, I gotta wait and see what this juice bar is gonna do. But after this event, you asked how we was gonna use this information.
Yes.
I said, I'm not gonna worry about it. My goal is to have one all across the world, in every city, in every country around the world. I'm just gonna make it happen.
Yeah.
It's gonna pop up everywhere.
All right.
So I'm not gonna wait until I see what's going to happen. I'm just going to take action. And however, like I heard you say at the last event before, you was like, where the money going to come from? And you said, wherever it is now.
Right.
So, that's it. So
I love that.
Thank you, guys.
All right, way to go. Congratulations. That was great. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you, everyone that shared that. I know Bob goes backwards up the stairs, but I haven't mastered that yet. Thanks again, Wendy. She mentioned that she saw me at one of the events, and that line of, where's the money going to come from? Actually, is another manifestation story. A number of years ago, I'm married now to another French-Canadian named Denis, who's an incredible man and very blessed. I manifested him, actually. I'm going to tell you that story of how I manifested him. This is actually a good story. So I've been single, so I divorced Charles. I'd been single a number of years. Part of the paradigm that I had in going through that divorce experience was I realized that I didn't feel worthy of love. I don't know if any of you have ever been there, but it's not a good place to be. And of course, if you don't think you're worthy of love, are you going to attract love into your life? Actually, yeah. You probably will. Will you keep it? No. So I realized that that was a paradigm that I had, which came straight from childhood. So I decided to change it through space-time repetition of a new idea. I am loving, I am lovable, I'm worthy of love. And I affirmed it over and over again every single day. And then after a number of years of being on my own, I thought, it's time. And so I bought a book. And the book that I bought is a book called Attracting Genuine Love. And I put it on my nightstand. I didn't read it. I'm not really a big fan of reading. I do read, but I put it on my nightstand and I just said, do your magic. There's energy in everything, right? Attract genuine love. That's what I was looking for. I decided I knew what it would feel like to have someone in my life, but not just anyone. What it would be like to be celebrating holidays together, to be going on trips together, to be sharing meals together, to just have conversations together, walking down the street holding hands together. And I saw it and felt it. And so 2 weeks later, I was walking my dog. Now, by the way, I had a lot of friends telling me, go online, get in the online scene, or go to bars, that's where you meet men. I didn't want to do those things. And they're like, you think he's going to come to your door? I said, I don't know how it's going to happen. So I went walking my dog one day, and Denny had just moved in the neighborhood. And he was unpacking, and he had a dog. And the dog was out in front of his house. So you know what dogs are like, right? There's no hesitation there. They just go up and they start sniffing each other. And so my dog was up with his dog, and he came out of the house, and I thought, I like that. I think he's very handsome. And so I saw him, and thought, oh, that's nice. So we started chatting, and I was thinking to myself, I'd like a guy like that. I would like a guy like that. And we got to know each other a little bit, and I'd see him in the neighborhood, just he would be going to work. He was a pilot in the military. And Denny worked for the Department of National Defense and been in National Defense for 30 years. And he was flying the Prime Minister. That was his job. And so one day I was at home, I was working from home, and someone knocked at my door. And I go to the door, and it's Denny. And I had really just met him. And he said, listen, I can't get a hold of my dog sitter. I've got to go fly the Prime Minister, and I got to go now. I'll be back tonight. Would you mind watching my dog? I said, no, bring him in. So his dog came in for the day. He came back that night, knocked on my door. I said, come on in for a coffee. The rest is history. So Denny is not wired like Peggy. I'm a little bit of a risk taker. And so we had moved into a home. We had bought a home together. And I didn't like it. Like right away, I didn't like it. So we started looking for different homes. And we're on the MLS, multiple listing service site. We're looking at homes. And I wasn't looking at price tags. Bob taught me that. Don't look at price tags. Just decide what you want. So I put in the criteria for the kind of home that I would like, and up would pop the houses. They typically had a pretty nice price tag on them. So I'd find one, and I'd send it over to Danny going, hey, honey, what do you think of this one? Did you look at the price tag? It's like, no, well, how much is it? Like $1 million more than the one we're in? Don't worry about that. Well, where's the money going to come from? Wherever it is now. Right? Wherever it is now. So we found a home that was $1 million more than the one that we were in. Now, Danny being pilot, military, left-brainer, doesn't think the same way I do. So he's very analytical. He wants to know the steps of how to get there. So when I'm going, well, let's just go buy it. We'll figure it out, along the way. He's like, that's not the way I work. Right? So I began to see him on board with the idea. And over a short period of time, he was on board with the idea. But I remember going through that process. And of course, being married, I was making decisions a little differently. And I remember having that feeling of, yeah, maybe he's right. $1 million more is a little bit of a stretch. So I called my friend Bob Proctor. So, don't call Bob Proctor if you don't want to do something. So I called Bob. I said, Bob, Denny and I have our eye on this house. It's about $1 million more than the one that we're in. And I'm feeling it's maybe a bit of a stretch. And this is what he said. This is really good. He said, $1 million is neither big nor small. Only thinking makes it so. He said, if you want the house, get the house. You are the only one standing in your way. That is the truth. You are the only one standing in your way. We bought that house. We lived in that house. We sold that house and bought another one for double the price of that one, which I'll show you a picture of next. Oh, look at that. We're going to shift gears here, and we're going to talk about another area of expertise that I have, and that is how you can change your paradigms through writing a book, and how it can also contribute to you achieving some incredible goals and creating multiple sources of income. Are you guys interested in that? Would you allow me to talk about that? Is it okay if we go a little bit over today? Thank you, Rachel. The rest of you have to stay because Rachel said so. Okay, I want to talk to you about how this can be for you a real game changer, a life changer, and how there truly is an incredible upside. So you want to get your paradigms out of the way while you're doing this. Like, I remember when I decided I was going to write a book, I told my parents, hey, Mom, Dad, I'm going to write a book. This was their response. You're going to write a book? But I didn't allow that in. I became what my aunt called the brat. I wasn't listening to outside influences. If I wanted something, I was going for it. So I made a decision, but it changed me in so many wonderful ways. Because when you share your understandings, your experiences, your ideas, just the mere act of putting that all together is an incredible learning and awareness experience. I grew in the experience of writing the book, never mind what happened after that. And as I said, I wrote 3 books in 11 months, released them, and sold out of the first edition. Now, a book will establish you as instant credibility. You write a book, people assume you must know what you're talking about. Now, that's typically for nonfiction, but I work with both nonfiction authors and fiction authors. Do we have any authors in the house? Yeah, we got a number of authors in the house. Some new authors. We've got some international best-selling authors in the house. Got some New York Times best-selling authors in the house. And I'm going to share with you some stories of people that I've worked with, or people that I'm aware of, and what happened for them as well, and how they benefited from. So it can have you being almost recognized as this expert in your field. It can help you attract business. Like Bob wrote a book called You Were Born Rich. He wrote that book in 1984. It is still one of their biggest lead generators in their entire business. They give it away. It is translated into multiple languages. He has sold lots of copies as well. It's sold all over the world, but it's a lead generator as well. So I'll talk to you about how you can use the book for different things. It can also have you shift your audience's paradigms as well, because you're sharing your ideas. And it'd be a starting point for a business, and I'll show you how you can do that as well, and have you attract leads and be a catalyst to shift your own paradigms. So I have 15 books now, that slide should be corrected, that are translated into 37 languages and sold in almost 100 countries now. And I've been on the New York Times bestseller list. So I've had a number of books. These are the books that have been published through publishing houses. So I've been on the side of self-publish, publish in multiple different formats. My books are in multiple languages. I receive royalty checks all the time. I receive royalty checks for my books in English, royalty checks for my books in other languages, and I have books that have never been printed but are used as electronic books that are lead generators. So these are books that I've published through publishing houses. 4 of my books are published through Hay House. These are books that I self-published. The one in the middle, Be a Dog with a Bone, was a book that I wrote after I became an author, because I realized that if you're not like a dog with a bone and you're holding on tight to your dream, you might let it go or allow someone else to take it away from you. You've got to be like a dog with a bone. I self-published that book, but Hay House bought the rights to it afterwards, along with 3 other books. The book, The Millionaire Author, was a book that I wrote as a lead generator, and I was on my way to speak at a conference in San Diego, and I was scheduled to speak at another conference a few days later in Los Angeles. And I decided, you know what, I'd like to have that physical book in my hand as a bestseller next Thursday. It was Friday morning. All it was an ebook at that point. So I decided I'm going to make it into a physical book, get it up and available on Amazon for sale, make it a bestseller, and when I get on stage in Los Angeles next Thursday, I'm going to declare this is how fast you can do this, make this happen when you know what to do. One of the books that I wrote in a day. I wrote it in a Sunday. I got up on a Sunday morning. I'd already done a little outline. I got up on Sunday morning and I just decided I was going to write a chapter an hour. I didn't know if I could write a chapter an hour, but I made a decision I would write a chapter an hour. And by the end of that evening, I was very tired, but I had written the first draft of an entire book. But you don't even have to write it. You could record it. You could have a conversation. You could teach it. And you could take the content from what you teach. That's where the Millionaire Author book came from. I didn't write that. I took content from a program that I taught, had it transcribed, gave it to an editor, and that became a book. It's a lot easier to produce than you think. It's not that complicated. It certainly doesn't have to take years to create a book. Now, these books are lead generation books. I didn't write any of them. Actually, just realized that when I looked at the slide. I didn't write any of it. It's all my content. It's based on materials that I teach. It's based on programs that I've created, but somebody else wrote those books. And we use them as lead generators to other programs. Now, I have many manifestation stories of real estate. So I created a program called, Manifest Your Dream Home. And so we use the book called Yes to the Dream to use that as a promotion to our Manifest Your Dream Home program. I created a program called $1 Million a Month, because I've earned $1 million a month. I got a lot of colleagues, clients, friends that have earned millions in a month. And so I created a program called $1 Million in a Month. We use that book as a lead generator. It's a short book. It's an ebook. How to Sell Your Stuff and Not Your Soul was a book that my business partner, Trace Haskins, wrote for us, and we used it for a program that we were doing together. And the Millionaire Author was a lead generator as well. But all of this starts by making a decision that you're going to do it, a decision that you're not going to let your paradigms in the way. You see, a lot of people think, writing a book? I'm not a great writer. I'm not a great writer. I'm a terrible writer. I speak English, I understand English, but I'm not a great writer. You don't have to be a great writer to write a book. English doesn't even have to be your first language to write a book. You got to get out of the way. You might say, well, I'm a busy person. Get somebody else to write it. You can hire ghostwriters to write book. I've done that as well. But I made a decision that I would be a New York Times best-selling author. I felt that even though I'm not formally educated, a lot of people think that too. They got to be formally educated. I wasn't formally educated, but I believed I had something to share. I had experiences from my own life. I had knowledge and awareness from what I'd learned from great teachers like Bob Proctor and many others. And I had a passion to help other people. It's like Bob says, fall in love with helping people achieve their goals. When you help another, Bob talked about Zig Ziglar at lunchtime. He said, Zig Ziglar said, if you help other people achieve their goals, you're going to achieve yours. That's the way it works. It works with the law of laws. Emerson said the law of cause and effect is the law of laws. That's what it works with. You share your gifts, you share your ideas, and you don't know what's going to come back to you. So you make a decision. I became a New York Times bestselling author with the first book that was published through a publishing house, through Hay House, a book called Your Destiny Switch. I made a decision that I was going to do it, got on with the work, and when that book launched on May 1st, it earned its way onto the New York Times bestseller list. And it was number 2, right behind Harry Potter, which is a book that a lot of people were very familiar with. I really tried, thank you. I tried to get to the number 1 spot. I wanted to knock Harry off, but I didn't do it. But that's okay. Coming in second with Harry Potter, not a bad position. And then as a result of what I was doing in my life, I started to get phone calls from people like Marianne Williamson and Neil Donna Walsh and Greg Braden and Wayne Dyer and Robin Sharma and Debbie Ford and Richard Carlson asking me to help them. And I remember when those requests started to come in, I'm thinking, well, they're already successful. Why do they need my help? But what I got into, and as I mentioned this earlier, I was an early adopter in the World Wide Web. I saw what was possible with the World Wide Web. I was there when it first opened up in my country, in Canada, which, as you know, there aren't any borders with the internet. There are no borders. You can go online and create a presence online, and you can do it like that. And it doesn't matter how old you are either. I remember when Bob and I were doing a program together. Actually, that whole idea I shared with you earlier about making $1 million look small became a program that we ended up doing together. And I presented for an hour just stories of teenagers that had earned millions and millions of dollars. Teenagers. Because a lot of people think, well, she can do it, but I can't. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter where you come from. Anybody can do it. So these people started to contact me and wanted me to help them. Would you help me? You see, the old ways of doing things were no longer working. We've adopted, we've changed. You've got to be willing to adopt to the change that's going on in this world. It's a very different world today than what it was. And if you really want to do well, you got to understand how to reach your audience, how to market online, how to do it effectively so that you can get the results that you wanted. And I started working with these wonderful people, which in the beginning surprised me. Wayne Dyer, he contacted me and asked me to take his book, Inspiration. That's the name of the book, Inspiration, Your Ultimate Calling. One of his best books. I love that book. And I made it #1 in the world, #1. Neil Donald Walsh, same thing. Now, Neil Donald Walsh is the author of a series of books called Conversations with God. How many of you are familiar with Neil Donald Walsh's work? He sold hundreds of millions of copies of Conversation with God. And when he reached out to me, this is actually another manifestation story, which I think you'll appreciate. When I had written, actually I didn't write, a ghostwriter wrote the book, Your Destiny Switch, for Hay House. We had submitted it to Hay House to go into what's called production. So the book's in production. I got a call one day from a gentleman by the name of Patrick. So Patrick calls me at home and he says, Peggy, my name's Patrick. I'm the designer. I work for Hay House. I'm doing the cover for your book, Your Destiny Switch. I just want to know what's the name of the person who's doing the foreword because I have to put it on the cover. Who's writing the foreword? And I said, can I get it back to you later today? And he said, sure. I didn't know who was going to write the foreword. I hadn't asked anyone to write the foreword. So I just sat down and got quiet and I thought, who would I love? Who would I love to write the foreword? Well, I'd been studying Neil Donald Walsh's work. I loved his books. So I thought, Neil Donald Walsh. I would love Neil Donald Walsh to write the foreword for my book. Now, I knew who Neil Donald Walsh was. I didn't think he knew who I was. But I closed my eyes and I visualized in that moment, Your Destiny Switch by Peggy McCall, foreword by Neil Donald Walsh. I saw it in my mind. An hour later, and I swear to God, an hour later, an email landed in my inbox from Neil Donald Walsh. I'd never received an email from Neil Donald Walsh ever in my life. It was not one of his regular mailing ones. This was a personal email from his personal inbox, email address, and he said the following: how does one get the great Peggy McCall to help them with promote their book? He said, I understand you've helped my friends, Wayne Dyer, Debbie Ford, Marianne Williamson. I'm wondering if you'd be willing to help me. He said, the book that I want you to help me with is a book called Home with God. It's about transitioning. Go to the next phase of the eternal life. My father had just had a stroke at that time, and he was transitioning. And I said, yeah, I'm happy to help you, but would you write the foreword for my book? And he said yes. So I manifested that from Neil Donald Walsh. And then I helped launch his book, Home with God. Made it #1 in the world. And he sent me a note that said, thank you for what you did. He said, but I'm very clear what made the difference with this book. This was the most successful launch of any book in the entire Conversations with God book series, which surprised me because he had a lot of success. And he says, I'm very clear with the reason why. In 2 words, Peggy McCall. That was really nice. And then when he wrote the foreword, in the foreword, he wrote a wonderful foreword. In the foreword, he said, this may be the most important book you ever read. And I said to Hay House, put that on the cover when we promote it, which they did. So very blessed to work with those people. I've helped many people get on the New York Times bestseller list. If that's a goal of yours, or if it's something you're willing to entertain, I can absolutely help you with that. Now, a lot of people think I came from some kind of a entrepreneurial family or came from money. Not at all. And I mentioned yesterday about the upbringing that I had. We lived in a very poor environment. This was the home that I was raised in, 600 square foot home. And my father was a janitor. and my mother worked in a factory. Later, she got a job in a grocery store as a checkout clerk. But you know, Bob said something yesterday that really struck me, that he learned from his mom, and that was work ethic. I learned work ethic from my parents. I remember one time I was being interviewed on a radio show, and they're asking me about leadership. And they said, who are your greatest influencers for leadership? And I answered right away, and I said, my mom and my dad. They were. Even though they didn't have money and they were struggling, they taught me about showing up. When you make a commitment, you show up. When you're expected to be somewhere, you show up. When you have to be at work at a certain time, you're there early. Like Bob was talking about Vince Lombardi time. You're there early. They taught me that. It was a great example. But this is where I was raised. And this is where I live now. We just moved in 2 months ago. It's over 9,000 square feet. 8 bathrooms, 7 bedrooms. Wendy's going to help with the payment. Oh, she left the room. Perfect. Hopefully she'll forget all about her stack of cash that's up here on the desk. All right. You know, I feel a little embarrassed showing this, to be honest. It's not a bragging situation. I want to show you what's possible. I want to show you a contrast, you know, where I came from and where I am now, and living in this incredible life. Like you know, Louise had said the other night that she feels like she won the lottery. I feel like I won the lottery in life. I've got an amazing husband who I really love and appreciate. I'm healthy. I've got a wonderful son, a daughter-in-law. I have a grandson who's the light of my life. We live in a beautiful home. I run my own business. I work whatever hours I want. I really live a charmed life, and I don't ever take it for granted. That's why you've got to stay in the study. That's why we see people in the room who have already created phenomenal success. And they're in the room, and they're studying, and they're committed. And when they're given a workbook like the one that we're given, they will follow through with those exercises. Because when you do, you will be rewarded. Absolutely rewarded. So we're going to just quickly run through a couple different examples, and then I'll wrap up. I do have an opportunity if you want to work with me. There is an invitation that'll be on your desk in a minute. But we just want to look at some examples to show to get paradigms out of the way. P.Z. Ling is a woman that I met at the Matrix event. And the Matrix event, she came to the Matrix event. She does not speak English as her first language. I mean, she speaks English. It's not her first language. She's originally from Cambodia. And she had a dream to write a book. And I helped her. Not only did she write it, she made it an international bestseller. This book was written by a young gentleman by the name of Destin Gregory. Destin was 5 years of age when he wrote this book. So Chloe, Adasia, Johnny, like there's no excuse. Age doesn't matter. This 5-year-old wrote a book about the day he met Bob Proctor. Mick Peterson is right here in the front. Stand up, Mick. He was my assistant yesterday with the exercise. That's his vacation photo with Phil Goldbein. He loves that photo. The reason why I use this photo is because Phil is now representing Mick. They now have a contract deal, and they're going to make this into a franchise that's bigger than Harry Potter. Now, you can get a copy of Still in the Timekeepers on Amazon.com. Mick actually now has a publisher. He rewrote the book, re-released it. He is an international best-selling author. He's written a sequel. He actually wrote it up at my cottage. He's got a copy right there. Wonderful. Thank you. Oh, that's the new version. I need the new version for my slide, don't I? That's the old version. Thank you very much. So fiction, nonfiction, it works with both, what I teach and what I guide people. Sometimes people will ask me, like, does your methodology work for a cookbook? Listen, if there's an audience for your book, it works. If it's a children's book, cookbook, fiction, nonfiction, whatever kind of book, it will work. I mentioned that Louise Tremblay has said the other night that she feels like she won the lottery. I've known Louise for many years. I met her when she was a director at Bell Canada, and she wrote the most incredible novel I have ever read. And I'm sorry, Meg, but yours is the second best novel I've ever read. Louise's book it's not out, it's not available yet. I just wanted to show you this because she followed through. This is an example. I've been saying Louise for years. It's inspired by real events. You've got to write your book. If you ever have a chance to chat with this lady, L.L. Tremblay, Louise Tremblay, you must. Like last night, she was in our suite and she was telling stories. She captivates people. She's an incredible writer, and this is an extraordinary story. And Phil is now representing her, and we're going to be getting a publishing deal and a movie contract. And the way the book's written, Phil said this the other night, the book is written very visual. You can see it as you read the book. So there's a dream that's going to come true. Elle Newmark wrote a novel as well. And she tried to get a publisher, couldn't get a publisher, decided to self-publish, brought it out, couldn't sell anything because she didn't realize that publishing a book is 5% of an author's responsibility. 5%. If you want your book to be successful, you've got to invest and engage in the other 95%. What is that? Marketing. Thank you. So Elle Newmark self-published her book. She took my program. She launched it, she made it a bestseller, and within 2 weeks of launching her book, called Bones of the Dead, she got a deal from Simon & Schuster for $2.4 million. $2.4 million. She sent me an email, because she told me that her agent was putting up for auction. She's like, I don't even know what that means. I said, if your book's going up for auction, it means that your agent believes there's going to be people or publishers bidding on it. And Simon & Schuster preempted all the other bids because they wanted it. $2.4 million. She also sold the rights to Germany that same day for $75,000, and then it went on from there. Carol Abramson wrote a very unique book about investors' guides that every CEO and CFO who's serious about attracting Wall Street interest must understand. She gave her book away, and 100 clients bought it, and she earned $2 million. Onyx Singal wrote a book on how to make money on the internet. And he launched that, and within 2 weeks, he generated just under $12 million in revenue. Now, why I'm sharing this with you is because it's possible. It's possible, and there's even more that can be done. Not just this. I want to expand your idea. I want to get you thinking a little different. I want you to move those old paradigms out of the way and really go for it. Because there's so much more in you, and there's so much more waiting for you. So many more benefits from that as well. Yes to the Dream is the one that I mentioned to you that we use as a lead generator. Now, I own about 650 domain names. I'm a little bit of a domain name-aholic. As a matter of fact, I registered, I think it was around my 383rd domain name, addictedtodomains.com, but I let it go because I figured that might be a sign. Anyway, so I have yestothedream.com where you can go and actually download that free ebook, but it is a lead generator. It leads people to get inspired. It shares some interesting stories about manifestation, some of mine, some other people as well, and then it invites them to invest in a program that I have called Manifest Your Dream Home. And this is what it looks like. These are the sales pages that we have. The $1 Million in a Month that we just launched just a couple months ago and have a number of people that are in this program. You know, I was sitting on my sofa one Saturday morning, had a cold, wasn't feeling well, and that idea popped in my mind. Because I'm always thinking about, what is it that people really want? What is it that people really want? How can I serve people in greater and grander ways? Which is a great way to be. It's like, how will I serve today? How will I serve? How will I show up? And I thought, I'm going to create a program called $1 Million in a Month and help people really expand their awareness. It's like Bob said this morning, the person that's earning $50,000 a year simply doesn't have the awareness to earn $50,000 a month. But it's possible, and even more than that is possible. Here we have the wonderful Anders Hansen, he was here. I met him just a couple of years ago. It seems like it was longer than that. And Anders was here performing at one of the Paradigm Shift events. And when he got off the stage, I said, Anders, and he performed for a little bit of a longer period of time. But his messages were so powerful. And the way he delivered it was so clear. And it was such a unique way. And after he got off stage, I said, Anders, you could just take the transcript from what you just said on stage, put it into a book. And he's like, oh, I like that idea. And he moved into action. And this is a book that he gives away on his website, 3 Illusions to Impossible. I suggest that you check that out. So you got to realize that the book can be It can be a loss leader. Sometimes it can be. I've earned a lot of money from my books as well, but it could lead to programs. It could lead to prospects that are looking to your coaching. It could lead to a product. It could lead to a membership site. It could lead to a live event, multiple live events. There's a number of things that a book could lead into. And what's really exciting about all of that is when you create these MSIs, and this is really what Bob talks about, how people get wealthy, is they create MSIs. And it just keeps adding up and adding up and adding up, and then it all lands in your bank account. So now I'm going to wrap up with an invitation that I have for us to work together if you choose. It's on your desk. They're in there. They handed out a little brochure or a pamphlet. I'm so grateful for Wendy. Becoming a best-selling author. And inside here is the registration form for a program that I teach called The Committed Author. And we called it Committed Author because I'm committed to your success. I would like you to be committed to your success as well. So it's your turn to really take this, and it's not complicated. It really isn't. It's not rocket science. It's rather simple. Susanna, who's a consultant with TIR, actually, I met her at one of the trainings, and she said, I want to write a book before I go back to Australia. I said, when are you going back? She said, next Thursday. She wrote her book in 7 days. That's a picture of her sitting on at the swim platform at my cottage. But it works for anyone. It doesn't matter who you are, where you came from. And you could start by creating something that's simply a lead generator, or you could decide you're going to be a best-selling author. Just think about what that looks like on your business card. Think about how that looks on your website. Think about how that is when you're being introduced. New York Times best-selling author. But I find nowadays, this is a different world we live in. It's an information age right now. One of the biggest things that's selling online is information. It's a multi-$100 million business. And you can tap into that. This is what we're really looking for. They anticipate that by 2020, that we'll have even more people. These numbers, like the World Wide Web, have just grown since the World Wide Web opened up in 1994. And I was there with the first company that opened up, started. All I've seen over the years is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Same thing with the commerce, the amount of money, the transactions that are going on online. Unlimited possibilities. They're expecting 4.17 billion internet users by next year. And you can reach them from wherever you are. And people are hungry. I remember I went to a party for Louise Hay for her 80th birthday party, and it was at Reed Tracy's home. He's the president of Hay House. And I was meeting with some of the people, and we were talking about my book, Your Destiny Switch. And I had said to the folks in the production department, I said, I really wanted to call that book, The World Doesn't Need Another Self-Help Book. I thought it was funny, but they didn't. That's the business they're in. But the world does need another book. They need another perspective. They need another understanding. We're never going to stop studying. You have something to share that the world is waiting for. And you're going to grow in the process of doing it as well. And it's going to have your personality. So this market is enormous, unlimited, and it continues to grow. And it's easier nowadays. You see, I started doing this when my son was a young guy in school. I was a single mom at home, and I just started marketing on the internet. And I was scared. You know, I really didn't know what I was doing at first, but I started to see the results come in. And more results. And I realized just how hungry people were and how people wanted more and wanted more and wanted more. And it gave me an opportunity to create other kinds of offerings that came out of a book. You know, courses, retreats, certification programs, downloadable programs. You don't even have to produce anything. But I'm here to help you cash in on that. That's what I believe. So the process is a lot simpler, but where it starts is like with anything, is making a decision. You've got to make a decision that you're doing it now. But where the real money and the impact comes from is from taking action. You've got to decide you're going to make the impact and you're going to cash in. And you can set some goals. Maybe it's $1 million in a month. Maybe it's $1 million in an hour that you're going to accomplish that. So we created a program called The Committed Author. And for anyone that's streaming, you can just go to peggyandbob.com and you'll see the information there. And it's quite simple. Everything you need as an author to be successful, Fiction, nonfiction. Yes, it's the writing part, but remember, after you publish a book, what % of your job is done by then? 5. Yeah, 95% is the marketing. So obviously I go into the marketing as well. I talk about how do you create those multiple sources of income as well. Then you might say, well, when do I have access to you? We do Q&A calls twice a month. Sometimes more often, I'll schedule them in. Q&A calls twice a month where you have access to me. You see, when you register, you get the program right away. There's no waiting. You'll get instant access to the entire program. It's all online. Video, guided tutorials, resources, everything that you need to step through it at your pace. There's not like a time limit to say you have to have it done by September 1st. If you decide you don't want to start until September 1st, you start September 1st. You can start wherever you want. We have a private Facebook group for all the members that are in the Committed Author Program. The value in that is really the connections you make as well. What I've discovered from being an author is authors love helping other authors. They really do. They're there to support you. So you can get endorsements, you can get people to help you when you launch your book. I know that's how people have made their books successful. Publicity secrets, I've been trained by the best in the world. So I talk about how you can get publicity, TV, radio, magazine, newspaper, those kinds of things. And then we made it even more simpler for you by creating actually the pages that are required, the electronic pages, the web pages, for you to have a funnel already set up, just a plug and play. So we've established all of that for you. We created it as part of the program. And then for those of you that want to either create a program before you write your book or a program after your book, you want to create your own program, we teach you how to get your program done and how to get your program launched. Now the value is well over $30,000. I mean, it's really hard to put a value on this. When I think what it's brought back to me in my life, millions of dollars. This number should probably be around the millions. And I know the same thing for my clients, but we've made it very affordable. We've got a payment plan as well at only $4,997. That's the investment to get in. I do an event once a year called the Prosperous Author Event. I'll be doing another one next year. Anyone that registers today and brings your registration back to me, actually, Nick will collect them. There she is, and Nick's going to collect them up here. Once you're ready, you've made a decision, you can fill out the registration form, and Nick's going to take them for you, and you will get a ticket to the next Prosperous Author Event as my guest. Now, people are pretty good at two things, making money or making excuses. What are you guys good at? Making money, all right, great. You can't be good at both. I like that. So just think, just imagine. I mean, maybe you weren't even thinking about this before, but now you're thinking, heck, this sounds a lot easier and there's a lot more opportunity. Just imagine what your life would be like when you're being introduced as an international best-selling author, as a New York Times best-selling author. When you earn that forever. Phil Goldfine is an Academy Award-winning producer. He'll always be an Academy Award-winning producer. He earned it. He's earned all those other awards. You never get it taken away from you. It's the same thing when you earn your way as a best-selling author or New York Times best-selling author. It's something that will never be taken away from you. And you could impact millions of people. I remember one time being in Washington, D.C., I was speaking at a conference and somebody stopped me in the street to tell me how my book changed his life. He recognized me. And just the impact it can make on your bank account. Their earnings, the kind of money that's possible in this space is extraordinary. I'm just sharing a couple different examples. And of course, if you had that on autopilot, I love it when Bob says, I made more money last night when I was sleeping than what I can spend while I'm awake. Now, this is I took a little photo of Decision, which is from Think and Grow Rich, that says, accurate analysis of over 25,000 men and women who had experienced failure disclosed the fact that lack of decision was near the head of the list of 30 major causes of failure. This is no mere statement of a theory, it's a fact. And that's why we're calling it the committed author. Successful people make decisions quickly. So you want to do something today that your future self is going to say, thank you for. Now, I find attending any of Bob Proctor's events, any Proctor Gallagher event, is that experience. You come here, you invest the time. Back at home in Canada, it's Canada Day. Do we have any Canadians in the room? Where are our Canadians? It's Canada Day. I love my country and I love Canada Day. We always have a Canada Day party. Everybody has to come dressed in red and white, but I'm here. I'm getting texts from my husband telling me he's out in the boat and he's having a great time. but we make commitments to our success. And there will be sacrifices. There will be sacrifices, and they're not necessarily bad sacrifices. You know, we got to do whatever's required to get to where we want to go. And that's what the paradigm shift is really all about. So if you're interested in working with me, I'd love to work with you as well. I'll leave it with you. You can make that decision. You can come and see my wonderful director of client services, and Nick and I will be up here in the front of the room. But that's my session for today. We combined a couple different parts of the paradigm shift with this as well. It's absolutely been my pleasure to be here to serve you guys. You guys are absolutely incredible. I wish you only success in everything that you do. All right, that's it. So thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to go a little bit over time as well. All right, everyone, thank you. Is Gina in the room?
All right, live streamers, that was an incredible session with Peggy. She is such an important part of the PGI family, and there's no one better to help you write a book and make it successful than Peggy. So if you have an idea to write a book, no one really realizes how hard it is to market your book and make it a bestseller. Writing the book is really just the very beginning of making it a success. So we couldn't recommend Peggy more. She's incredible at what she does. If that's something that you feel like you want to do and you want to pursue, go to peggyandbob.com and check it out. It comes with Bob and Sandy and all of PGI's highest recommendation. Now, I just want to end the day. I'd love for everybody in the chat to say your biggest aha moment or your favorite part of the day. We love hearing from you in the chat. We're going to be back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Pacific, and in the meantime, I'm going to play a quick video on becoming a Procter Gallagher consultant, which is an incredible opportunity if you want to get into this business. It's an $11 billion business and growing at such a rapid pace, and there's so much opportunity to partner with Bob, Sandy, and the Procter Gallagher Institute so that you can kind of wear our brand as you jump into this business. We'll give you all the tools, resources that you need to make it a big success. All right, here's that video. We'll see you tomorrow morning.
My name is Scott Haug, and before I became a Procter Gallagher consultant, I was not in a great place.
I pretty much felt like a little aunt. You know, sometimes I would be on a plane and I would look down and have that feeling, if I wasn't here, it would be okay. I wouldn't be missed by anyone. That wouldn't make any difference. I didn't have a purpose.
Before I became a consultant, I was a practicing lawyer in Australia, and I worked for several years successfully, but there was just something that I wasn't quite satisfied with.
In 2010, my life was just, I tried to do everything to please other people, went to college, got a degree. The income just wasn't there. I just wasn't happy. I wasn't making the money that I thought that I would make from going to college.
Before I became a Procter Gallagher consultant, I was running my own business. I'd been a teacher for 15 years, and my husband and I, we ran a dairy farm, and I had 4 young children.
I was sitting in a cubicle, and I can remember that I just felt like something was dying inside of me. Never knew what it was because I wasn't really studying personal growth and development yet, but I knew something was wrong. I knew there was something more in my life. Just I wasn't sure what it was.
I got to the point where I was working big hours, enormous hours. I wasn't seeing my children through the week. I'd get home at about 6:30. I'd have dinner with my wife, and at 8 I'd start working, and I'd keep working until 11 at night.
In my business, I was putting lots of time, money and effort into it, and over 3 years I just wasn't getting to where I really wanted to go, and I got to a point I was really frustrated.
There was something missing, and I knew it, I felt it in my heart. And one day I caught up with a family friend. He said, "Ben, tell me your goals." I was like a babbling buffoon. I could not articulate what I really wanted in life. And he said to me, "Ben, you are playing golf at night. You don't know where you're hitting."
You know, it's like being in a cave for so long, and all of a sudden you keep on looking for this, tiny little light. Where is the exit?
I like the quote that Bob Proctor uses about Vernon Howard. He says, "You can't escape from a prison unless you know you're in one." We put ourselves in that prison, but we don't even realize that we're doing it.
I had all the degrees and all the expertise. I kept doing lots and lots of training courses, expecting that they would help me get to where I wanted to go, and I just couldn't get ahead. But I knew I was destined to do more than what I was actually doing.
I went to a Bob Proctor seminar. At the time I had no income, probably had like $500 left in the bank account. I sold my truck just to go to the seminar. And when I saw Bob speak, I knew there was something very important to what he was saying. I didn't know what it was exactly, but I knew that if I wanted to change my life, I had to do something different.
I watched a Paradigm live stream. I literally realized, my God, I'm not broken. Like, when I heard about paradigms and how they were limiting my life, it was like, oh my goodness, this huge veil lifted off as the possibilities of what my life could now be like.
I did watch The Secret for the first time December 2015, and there and then I made the decision Bob would be my mentor.
He told me, find out what your definite major purpose is in life. So I wrote that down in a book, and I put my definite major purpose in life was to help a lot of people, right, and make $1.75 million by January 1st, 2017.
Bob said, if you want to teach this material, if you want to help the world, kind of liven people up, help them transition to a better life, you can become a consultant with the Proctor Gallagher Institute. And instantly I had like fire throughout my body, and I knew exactly this is what it's going to be. So I didn't have the money though. And like I said, I was kind of broken, that income. And when I made the decision, everything changed. Like I said, I didn't have the money, but I set a goal date for August 20th, 2016 to become a consultant. And on August 19th, 2016, it came. I borrowed the money. And I borrowed the money to get into the program, and everything in my life has been so dramatically different.
I think what made me to really make a decision was when I heard Bob saying, just don't worry about procrastination, just go to the polar opposite, which is make a decision. And I was like, that's it, I need to make a decision to become a consultant.
Fast forward 2 years, I've become an accredited consultant with the Proctor Gallagher Institute, and am absolutely loving the journey in my own personal growth, but also helping others around the world. I have clients in Australia, I have clients abroad. So it's very, very meaningful to me that I'm helping influence them to be better people. It's all about betterment, and through that I'm becoming a better person.
Becoming a Proctor Gallagher consultant, I signed up straight away. I knew that this was going to be the avenue that I could go out, change people's lives and really help them in their own businesses, but in their life, how that could then flow down throughout their everyday life with their families as well, enriching their lives in so many ways.
I actually have a couple students that already hit the $1 million mark as well. My sister, she's probably gonna watch this video and she's gonna say, wow, you know, it's true. You know, I seen something in her she didn't see in herself, and she just took off like a rocket.
I realized that what happens to me, it's not by default or by deserving, but by design. And all I need to do is to be aligned with my true self. And that true self had been lost for so many years because I never had the courage to face who I truly am, because I didn't like who I was. But now that I realize the potential in me, the reason I'm here for, to help people and to help them to realize who they are, everything now makes total sense.
When I became a Proctor Gallagher consultant, I started to live my dream. Every single morning, I wake up with lightning. I just going out there helping people change their life. My income, the annual income, changed to a monthly income within a year, and everything in my life is just much better. Relationships, health, everything. Vibrance and who I am is there. I couldn't pick anything else in this entire world to do. I'm gonna do this for the rest of my life. You help people every single day, and as you're helping them bring out the best, you're bringing out the best in yourself.
If you are on the fence of becoming a Proctor Gallagher consultant, my advice to you is make the decision.
If there's something inside of you that says like, you love helping people, you wanna impact the world, you wanna change the world, you wanna do something, then this is the thing to do.
You have to think about what you really want.
And how do you want to serve? We all have a purpose. Ask yourself that. What is that? What's your purpose?
If you're even sitting on the fence thinking, oh, I should do this, if you have that desire in your heart that you know that this is something that you could do and do well, just jump in, make the decision. You will not look back.
The money's always gonna come and go, the time's always gonna come and go. So if you're thinking about doing this, just do it.
You will look back on your life in 6 months, 12 months' time. You will not recognize the person that you are right now.
Absolutely guaranteed. You will become a much deeper, a much richer person by becoming a consultant.